Chapter 1837. In the primordial forest, just as the black rat used the chains to drag the Destiny Stone tablet back to the independent space under the stream, the invisible defense formed by the Destiny Stone tablet in the air above the primordial forest was suddenly attacked fiercely. Moreover, from the countless ripples that appeared when the invisible defense was attacked, the opponent's cultivation and strength did not lose out to the black rat, who was at the peak of the 9th level of the God Realm. Since the Destiny Stone tablet, which was the source of energy for the invisible defense, had been forcefully dragged back to the independent space under the creek spring by the black rat, the invisible defense, which had lost its source of energy, could only last for less than 5 minutes under the relentless attacks of the opponent before it was completely broken through. Then, a giant golden bird that was about 1,000 meters tall, with 3 legs and 2 flaming wings, rushed in through the gap in the invisible defense that had been forcefully torn apart. After coldly sweeping its eyes across the entire primordial forest, the giant bird's gaze finally stopped at the stream by the stream. It flapped its wings and slowly landed next to the stream. After staring at the stream for a while, the giant bird stuck its sharp beak into the ground and stopped 9 meters below the stream. However, when the black rat dragged the Destiny Stone tablet back to the independent space, it also smoothed out the spatial crack that had been forcefully torn apart by the Thawing Stone tablet. Therefore, after the sharp beak stayed for a minute, it directly left the bottom of the stream. At the same time, the giant bird flapped its wings and left the stream, leaving the primeval forest. 5 minutes later, the void crack that had been smoothed out under the creek spring was once again torn open. The black rat that had scurried out of the independent space and the creek spring looked in the direction where the giant golden bird had disappeared and muttered to himself with a solemn expression. Even that old fellow, scorching sun spirit destroyer, has awakened early and has begun to interfere with the situation of the continent. Looks like Master and I have to hurry up and increase our cultivation and strength. Otherwise, with the strength of scorching sun spirit destroyer and the origin energy of the law of entrapment reversed by the star chessboard, we can completely skip Master's opening of the immeasurable calamity and obtain that sliver of heaven-defying opportunity. After muttering to itself, the black rat returned to the independent space under the stream and stretched out its 4 claws on the Destiny Stone tablet, beginning its unique cultivation method. Where is this? After a brief moment of dizziness, Yuhauran quickly regained consciousness. He immediately sized up his current location and discovered that the Destiny Stone steel had sent him into an independent space. The area of the independent space was not very large. It was only a few thousand square meters, which was about the size of a football field. In the middle of the isolated space, there was a Destiny Stone tablet that had been shrunk tens of thousands of times. Around the Destiny Stone tablet, there were 5 different colors of gas that emitted a mysterious aura. The colors of the 5 gases were white, gray, yellow, blue, and purple. Walking to the stone tablet in the center of the space, Yuhauran temporarily ignored the 5 types of gas floating in the air. Instead, he carefully looked at the stone tablet in front of him that had been shrunk countless times. Whether it was its shape, color, or aura, this 90-centimeter tall stone tablet was exactly the same as the 10,000-meter tall Destiny Stone tablets outside. However, the difference was that there was no name carved on the front of the 90-centimeter tall stone tablet. The bottom of the stone tablet also did not have the 9 chains that bound the Destiny stealing spirit rat. Perhaps it was because of the attraction of the aura of destiny, or perhaps it was because of curiosity, but after carefully looking at the stone tablet in front of him, he suddenly stretched out his finger to touch the stone tablet. The moment his finger touched the stone tablet in front of him rapidly softened and then merged into his body through his finger. Boom! Just as the softened stone tablet completely merged into his body, Yuhauran suddenly heard a thunderous roar in his sea of consciousness. Following the low roar, an unimaginably large amount of information appeared in his sea of consciousness and then crazily surged towards his soul like a wave. Seeing the large amount of information that occupied almost 1/10 of his sea of consciousness crazily surging towards him, Howard could not help but change his expression at the same time. At the same time, he immediately used the method of mental connection to forcefully split the rapidly surging information into 3 parts. Then, his 2 clones used special methods to temporarily store and seal the information. Because there was simply too much information surging towards his soul, even if he only received one part of the information, Howard felt as if his head was about to explode. Fortunately, the aura of destiny that suddenly erupted from his heart rapidly increased the capacity and cultivation of his soul, as well as his tenacious willpower. He finally succeeded in absorbing all the information in his sea of consciousness. Thawing immediately set up an independent space that accelerates time. There was no need to check the amount of information that had merged into his soul. Howard knew that if he wanted to merge all the information into his memory, he would need at least several months, or even close to a year. Faced with the unpredictable situation of the Tianxin continent and the pressure of the fake Destiny's Child, Ji Xing, how could he waste his time on merging information? Therefore, he could only rely on the victor's ability to accelerate time to help him merge all the information in his soul in the shortest time possible. Got it. After responding, Thawing temporarily stopped the merging of the primal chaos imprint and the Rui Bell. Then, he mobilized the space-time energy within the victor and quickly set up a space that accelerated time by 1 to 100. Using the accelerated time-space, Howard began to read and understand the information that had merged into his soul with all his might. He borrowed the origin of the Destiny's Stone tablet, its abilities, and the benefits that it could bring him. Just as Howard was using the method of accelerating time to speed up the merging of the countless information in his soul, a summons suddenly came from the Yushu Temple, causing the storm caused by the Destiny's Child and the Immortal Ascension Pill to become a tornado. In the face of the Destiny's Child's summons, regardless of whether it was the oldest inherited families or lone practitioners, all of them were in a dilemma. This was because according to the contents of the summons issued by the Destiny's Child, forces and lone practitioners who were willing to form a life and death alliance with the Yushu Temple and were willing to face the immeasurable calamity together had to arrive at the Yushu Temple's underground palace square within 7 days to participate in the blood contract oath ceremony. If they did not arrive at the Yushu Temple's underground palace square within 7 days, or if they chose to stand by and watch, they would be regarded as anti-allies. Not only would anti-allies not be able to receive any protection or help from the Destiny's Child during the immeasurable calamity, but they might also be treated as a hidden danger and dealt with in advance before the immeasurable calamity officially began. Chapter 1838. In the Blue Dragon Mountain Range, A.O. Xian, the patriarch of the Blue Dragon clan, one of the 4 great guardian clans, had been very depressed recently. Emperor Wu, a peak 9th level elder, had gone to Whitebone City. Not only had he failed in his mission to suppress the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable, causing him to die, but he had also provoked the narrow-minded Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable, who had been hiding in the mountain range to seek revenge. In less than a year, the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable had killed a total of 36 martial honors. Emperor Wu and demigod clansmen with the terrifying attack power of the immortal slaying sword. At the same time, the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable's strange and ever-changing concealment secret technique not only allowed him to evade the pursuit of the martial god realm ancestors, but also allowed his cultivation to rise to the peak 9th level of Emperor Wu in a short period of time with his monstrous talent and cruel and evil secret technique of devouring. If the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable was allowed to continue running wild, not only would it affect the secret plans of the Guardian clans, but it would also have a fatal impact on the confidence of the younger generation of clansmen. Therefore, A.O. Xian already had a headache on how to smoothly kill the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable. However, in the process of seizing the treasures in Zhen Yuan's tomb, he had lost a peak 3rd level demigod ancestor, as well as the Blue Dragon Divine Beast, which was like the sea-suppressing Divine Needle. This gave Ao Zian an even bigger headache, and he vaguely felt very uneasy. It was as if there was a hidden force plotting against the Blue Dragon clan and the four Great Guardian clans. An hour ago, the Yushu Temple suddenly issued a summons, or rather, a summons, which further increased his uneasiness. Therefore, in just half an hour, Ao Zian used a special secret technique to summon the patriarchs of the other three Guardian clans to discuss how to deal with the summons issued by Destiny's Child. Jixing, Big Brother, we have a mutual support agreement with Destiny's Child and Destiny's Child, so I think we don't have to pay attention to the summons issued by the Yushu Temple. Seeing Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Huang Yinyu sitting in the hall with their heads lowered in silence, the impatient Bai Moyuan finally broke the oppressive atmosphere in the hall and spoke first. Third sister, what do you think? After hearing the opinion of the White Tiger clan's patriarch, Bai Moyuan, Ao Zian woke up from his deep contemplation. After a trace of interest flashed through his eyes, he asked the Vermilion Bird clan's patriarch, Hui Yiling, Big Brother, I think second brother is right. Hui Yiling, who was dressed in a long red dress, replied with a hint of arrogance in her eyes. Regardless of whether it's the agreement with the will of the heavens or the influence of the Yushu Temple's own strength, I feel that the summoning order issued by Destiny's Child should be targeted at those independent cultivators who don't want to be controlled and restrained. It shouldn't have much of an impact on the four Guardian families. Fourth brother, what do you think? Nodding his head, Ao Zian felt that Hui Yiling's words made sense. He turned his gaze to the Black Tortoise clan's patriarch, Huang Yinyu, who was known for his wisdom. Faced with Ao Zian's questioning, Huang Yinyu, who understood Jixing's true identity and the patriarch's calculations, reminded him with a solemn expression. Big brother, second brother, third sister, ever since Jixing took the initiative to reveal his identity as Destiny's Child, not only has the Yushu Temple's reputation reached its peak in a short period of time, but the number of Emperor Wu, demigods, and martial gods that they have secretly subdued and pledged allegiance to is no longer inferior to our four Guardian families. If they use the threat of the summoning order to force more families and sects, as well as independent cultivators like Emperor Wu, demigods, and martial gods to join the Blood Pact Alliance, then, whether it's overall strength or the number of peak experts, they will far surpass us. At this point, Huang Yinyu raised his head to look at Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Bai Moyuan, and speculated with a hint of worry in his eyes. At that time, I'm afraid only Jixing himself will know if he, whose confidence has skyrocketed, will still care about us Guardian families, and if he will continue to abide by the agreement without any restrictions. After hearing Huang Yinyu's reminder, Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Bai Moyuan looked at each other and saw a hint of worry in each other's eyes. Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Bai Moyuan knew very well what kind of person Jixing was after decades of contact and cooperation. In a situation where his own strength and overall strength were far inferior to the Guardian families, he still dared to rely on his identity as Destiny's Child and the protection of the heavens' consciousness to order and pressure them to do things that they were unwilling to do. If the Yushu Temple's overall strength surpassed the four Guardian families, then it was not impossible for them to replace the four Guardian families as the new guardian of the Tianxian continent and become the overlord of the new era with the help of the immeasurable calamity. However, thinking of the heavens' consciousness that secretly controlled the situation of the Tianxian continent, it would definitely not be willing to see the internal strife between the Yushu Temple and the Guardian families, which would cause their side strength to decline and weaken their control over the Tianxian continent. At the same time, the ancestors of the four Guardian families were not only supreme existences at the peak of the honorable stage, but they had also been living safely in seclusion in the endless void. The heavens' consciousness had no choice but to be wary of the existence of the four ancestors. Therefore, after repeatedly weighing the pros and cons, the worry in Ao Zian's eyes disappeared as he shook his head and denied Huang Yinyu's speculation. As the saying goes, don't have the heart to harm others, but don't let your guard down. After hearing Ao Zian's denial of his speculation, a hint of anxiety flashed across Huang Yingyu's eyes. However, when he thought of the black tortoise's secret instructions and warnings, he could only forcefully suppress the impulse in his heart and do his best to remind Ao Zian. Big brother, regardless of whether the Yushu Temple's summoning order this time is targeted at the four guardian families or not, considering Ji Xing's wild ambition and the increase in the overall strength of the Yushu Temple, not only do we have to raise our vigilance by 120%, but we also have to make preparations for defense in advance. Fourth brother is right. Ao Zian seemed to nod in agreement with his reminder, but his next arrangement made Huang Yingyu sigh heavily. In response to the summoning order issued by the Yushu Temple this time, the four guardian families have to make preparations just in case. Therefore, I've decided to send Elder Kairin, who is at the peak of the Third Tribulation demigod realm, to represent the Blue Dragon clan in the Blood Pact alliance this time. After hearing Ao Zian's arrangement, Hui Yiling and Bai Moyuan also sent out their clan's candidates to participate in the Blood Pact alliance. I've decided to send Elder Yiting, who is at the peak of the Third Tribulation demigod realm, to represent the White Tiger clan in the Blood Pact alliance this time. Chapter 1839. Sigh. Huang Yingyu could not help but sigh when he heard Ao Zian's method of defending against the Yushu Temple's summoning order, as well as Hui Yiling and Bai Moyuan's cooperation. Earlier, he had risked defending the Black Tortoise, the old ancestor. He had tried his best to warn Ao Zian in hopes that Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Bai Moyuan could secretly join hands with the 5 reclusive clans and 6 top sects who would never submit to the summons, as well as the arrogant top demigods and martial gods among the row cultivators, to increase their overall strength. At the same time, they had to prepare for defense and counterattack against the Yushu Temple whose strength had skyrocketed. He didn't even hesitate to use a drop of Supreme Being's blood essence to establish contact with the peak Supreme Being ancestors left behind in the boundless void and obtain the secret help of several ancestors. But in the end, they had sent out a Third Tribulation demigod elder to express their goodwill to the Heaven's will and the fake Destiny's Child. Huang Yingyu could only temporarily put aside his sibling relationship and follow the ancestor Black Tortoise's instructions when he thought of the Black Tortoise's inheritance and the arrogance and ignorance of Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Bai Moyuan. Brother, there have been some changes in the seals of the ancient god trial grounds and the demon sealing secret realm recently. In order to prevent the primordial gods and demons from appearing in advance and affecting our plan, we have already completed half of it. The ancestor Black Tortoise decided to mobilize all experts above the demigod realm to monitor the changes in the seals to prevent unpredictable changes. Therefore, we can't allocate enough elders to join the Blood Pact alliance. Fourth brother, the seals of the primordial gods and demons are very important. You must make sure that the sealing formation flags can self-destruct in the predetermined time. After hearing Huang Yingyu's explanation, Ao Zian hurriedly corrected his attitude. As for the summoning order of the Yushu Temple, you don't have to worry about it. Leave it to us. Okay. Huang Yingyu stood up and cupped his fists at Ao Zian, Hui Yiling, and Bai Moyuan. Big brother, second brother, third sister, I'll take my leave first. Fourth brother, be careful on the road. Ao Zian nodded and reminded him. After Huang Yingyu left the meeting hall, Ao Zian's face instantly darkened. Big brother, third sister, it seems that the old ancestor's premonition before his death was not wrong. The Black Tortoise clan is no longer on the same side as our 3 great clans. Bai Ming, whose face had also turned gloomy, reminded them with a fierce, murderous look in his eyes. Second brother, the 4 great guardian families have a heart demon blood oath. As long as the Black Tortoise clan does not betray us, we cannot act rashly. Ao Zian knew that Bai Ming, who had a murderous nature, had already developed murderous intent towards the Black Tortoise clan, so he quickly reminded him with a solemn expression. Moreover, with 4 Peaks Supreme Being ancestors, the Black Tortoise clan will never completely break off relations with us. Big brother, I got it. Thinking about the backlash from the inner demon blood oath and the terrifying methods of the 4 ancestors, by Mayun, who still had lingering fear, quickly put away the murderous intent in his heart. A.O. Zian, who had returned to his chair, reached out and tapped the armrest as he thought about the reason why Huang Yingyu was unwilling to participate in the joint action of the clan. In the end, he realized that his overconfidence and underestimation of the opponent's attitude was the fundamental reason why Huang Yingyu was disappointed and chose to stand by and watch. At the same time, A.O. Zian, who realized his mistake, re-examined the true intentions of the Yushu Temple and Ji Xing in issuing the order to gather. He quickly realized that there were too many hidden dangers in his arrangements, so he quickly made new arrangements for Hui Yiling and Bai Maiyuan. In the independent space formed by the Destiny Stone Tablet, 1 year and 3 months. The time acceleration space set up by the Thowling Temple made the ratio of time elapse to the extent that 1 day outside was equivalent to 1 year inside the space. Even with the help of the time acceleration, Yu Haoran spent a full year and 3 months to digest all the information transmitted to him by the Destiny Stone Tablet. Although it took a lot of time to digest the huge amount of information, the gains after the integration of the information made him feel that it was all worth it. First of all, the information given by the Destiny Stone Tablet recorded many secrets about the beginning of the world, the ancient era, the middle era, and the recent era. Through these secrets that even the Thowling Temple did not know about, he expanded his horizons and increased his experience. Not only did it allow him to further perfect the Destiny mental cultivation method, but it also gave him a clear direction on how to better break through to the martial god and martial saint realms. Secondly, the information given by the Destiny Stone Tablet recorded in detail the origins of all living things, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of each species. This allowed him to completely understand the strengths and weaknesses of the ancient god race, demon race, and the ancient Yao race that were about to appear, and completely resolve the crisis that the southern region was facing. Finally, the information given by the Destiny Stone Tablet clearly introduced the specific effects of the 5 different colored gases in the independent space of the Destiny Stone Tablet. Among them, the white gas was specifically used to raise one's mental state. The gray gas was used to raise the grade of one's physical body. The yellow gas was used to transform Yuan Li into divine power, and the blue gas was used to raise the strength of one's spirit. The purple gas contained a trace of origin source law energy, which was specifically used to raise the profound mysteries of laws. With the help of the 5 types of gases in the independent space of the Destiny Stone Tablet, he could completely raise his realm and strength by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Apart from the 3 benefits mentioned above, the information given by the Destiny Stone Tablet also recorded the cultivation comprehension of the auxiliary path, forbidden secret techniques of different periods, various auxiliary martial skills of different grades, and so on. It could be said that the enormous amount of information given by the Destiny Stone Steel was like an encyclopedia that knew everything. After slowly exhaling the turbid air that had accumulated in his chest, Yu Haoran notified the Thowling Temple to deactivate the time acceleration space. He raised his head to look at the 5 types of gases floating around him, and his gaze finally stopped on a ball of white gas. The mental state cultivation was the foundation of the auxiliary realm advancement. He decided to first use the special energy contained in the white gas to raise his mental state cultivation to the martial god realm first. The reward from the immortal ascension pill tribulation previously had already raised his mental state cultivation to the limit of the complete 10th stage Emperor Wu. However, due to his lack of comprehension and experience, he was unable to feel the bottleneck of the realm breakthrough. With the enormous amount of information that the Destiny Stone Steel had given him, his comprehension and experience were no less than that of a peak sovereign like the Tower Spirit. Therefore, as soon as the white gas entered his body, Yu Haoran immediately felt the bottleneck of his mental state cultivation breakthrough. Chapter 1840. Inside the independent space formed by the Destiny Stone Steel, Yu Haoran opened his eyes and carefully observed the amount of white gas left in the space. he discovered that he had only used up 1/20th of the white gas to break through his mental state. Based on the amount of white gas he had used to break through to the next level, the remaining 9/20th of the white gas was enough for his mental state to break through to the peak of 7th level martial god. Sizzle. Yuhaoran couldn't help but gasp at the thought of this. His face immediately revealed an expression of ecstasy. This was because there were still gray, yellow, blue, and purple gases in the space of the Destiny Stone Steel that didn't lose to the white gas. In other words, with the help of the gases in the space of the Destiny Stone Steel, he could raise his mental state, physical state, divine power, and soul power to the early 7th level martial god in the next 3 to 5 days. With the help of the purple gas, he could even break through to the early 7th level martial god if he majored in the laws of life and death. After the ecstasy, Yuhaoran suddenly felt unreal. He felt that the opportunity the Destiny Stone Steel had brought him was not only too heaven-defying, but it was so heaven-defying that it was a little frightening. Because of the fear in his heart, he finally decided not to absorb the other gases in the independent space for the time being. He planned to confirm with the Thaling and the empty spirit mouse that these gases didn't have any hidden dangers before deciding whether to use them to speed up his cultivation and strength. After closing his eyes again and consolidating his mental state that had just broken through to the early 1st level martial god, Yuhaoran's mind moved. The Destiny Stone Steel that had merged with his body was erected in the independent space again. Then he stood up and condensed the imprint before merging it with the steel in front of him. Then a gentle suction force gradually formed above the independent space and pulled him away. After taking one last look at the 5 gases floating around him, Yuhaoran took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the unwillingness and greed in his heart. Then he followed the gentle suction force and left the independent space. Master, why did you come out so quickly? The black mouse that was cultivating on the Destiny Stone Steel asked with a puzzled expression when it saw Yuhaoran suddenly appear in front of the steel. Master, why didn't you break through to the martial god realm? Brother Black Mouse, I have something very important to deal with as soon as possible. I haven't used the gases in the steel to increase my cultivation and strength. While Yuhaoran explained with a smile, he maintained his vigilance. I see. After hearing Yuhaoran's explanation, the Black Mouse's confusion disappeared. As the Destiny Stone Steel's companion beast, the Black Rat was very clear about the energy contained within the 5 types of gases within the Stone Steel space, as well as the increase in the cultivation and strength of the owner of the Stone Steel. With Yuhaoran's current cultivation, as long as he could absorb and refine the 5 types of chi in the steel space, his cultivation and laws would surely reach the peak 9th grade martial god realm. Then, with the help of the Destiny Steel's endless fortune, he would definitely be able to break through to the 9 heaven supreme realm within a year. When the time came, he would be able to control the Destiny Stone Steel as a sovereign. He would be able to easily decide the life and death of all living things. And he would also be able to easily start and end the immeasurable calamity. In the end, he would successfully complete his mission as the Child of Destiny. Ignoring the Black Mouse's sigh, Yuhaoran quickly condensed imprints with his fingers and merged them with the steel. Return. When all 36 imprints merged with the Destiny Stone Steel, Yuhaoran stretched out his left hand and roared. Following Yuhaoran's roar, the black steel rapidly shrank, turning into a streak of black light and disappearing from his hand. After putting away the steel, Yuhaoran asked the Black Mouse with a smile, Brother Black Mouse, do you plan on staying on my shoulder or returning to the independent space of the Destiny Stone Steel? Considering that the strongest of the 3 spirit extinguishers, the Scorching Sun Spirit Extinguisher, had already awakened and was beginning to interfere with the situation of the profound sky continent, the Black Mouse urgently needed more strength to deal with the other party. In the end, it chose to stay in the independent space of the Destiny Stone Steel. This was because only by staying with the Destiny Stone Steel could its realm and strength continue to increase by leaps and bounds. Nodding to show that he respected the other party's choice, Howard waved his hand and sent the black mouse in the independent space of the Destiny Stone steel. The smile on his face was quickly replaced by a serious expression. Seeing that the independent space was gradually collapsing without the suppression of the Destiny Stone steel, he didn't waste any time. Using the power of law, he instantly left the independent space and the underground stream. Then, using the method of tearing through space, he directly returned to Qingyun Peak in the 100 Chi Gate. Sitting on a stone chair in the wind pavilion of the 9th courtyard, Howard knocked on the stone table while waiting for the results of the Thaling examination. After waiting for an entire day and night, Thaling's incomparably joyful voice sounded in his mind. Howard, fortunately you reined in the horse at the precipice in time and didn't continue to use the energy within the Destiny Stone steel to break through to the martial god realm. Otherwise, you would have completely lost the qualifications to break through to the immortal realm, and the highest achievement in your life would be the peak of 9th grade sovereign. Thaling, be more specific. Howard's finger that was knocking on the table suddenly stopped, and his expression instantly became gloomy as he hinted. Ignoring Howard's instructions, Thaling suddenly changed the topic and asked, Howard, with your alchemy cultivation and knowledge, is there a pill in this world that can allow an almighty expert like Emperor Wu, who is at the peak of 9th grade martial god realm, to directly break through to the peak of 9th grade martial god realm in one go? No. In this regard, Howard didn't care at all. After thinking for a while, he shook his head and replied, even the 9 transformation golden pill, which is known as the world's #1 divine pill, and is personally refined by Laozi, only has at most a 70% chance of helping one break through to the martial god realm, and a 30% chance of helping one break through to the sovereign realm. Howard, with your own experience and knowledge, is there a heaven-defying treasure in this world that can allow an almighty expert like Emperor Wu, who is at the peak of 9th grade martial god realm, to directly break through to the peak of 9th grade martial god realm in just a few days? Thaling continued to ask. No. If it was in the past, limited by his own experience and knowledge, he definitely wouldn't have been able to answer Thaling's question. However, after receiving the huge amount of information from the Destiny Stone steel, Howard believed that there was absolutely no one in this world who could surpass him in terms of experience. Therefore, after carefully recalling for a while, he shook his head and replied. Chapter 1841. Cool Breeze Peak, 9th Courtyard. Howard, even the 9 transformation golden pill and the wind thunder fruit, the best of the 3 great spiritual roots, couldn't achieve the effect of advancing to a higher realm. Thaling sneered as he recalled the 9 transformation golden pill and the wind thunder fruit that Howard had mentioned. Then, how can the Destiny Stone tablet, which has been condensed for less than a period of time, achieve this? Thaling, just tell me what's going on. The Tower Spirit used pills and spirit fruits to compare with the Destiny Stone steel. This made Howard feel even more uneasy. He impatiently urged the Tower Spirit. Actually, the 5 types of gas condensed by the Destiny Stone tablet are not pure energy that can be used to help you break through to the next realm. Instead, they're used to overdraw all of your potential. At the cost of destroying your attempt to break through to the immortal realm, you will be able to break through to the peak of the 9th grade sovereign realm in a short period of time. The Tower Spirit's voice was filled with anger as it explained. For more than 3 years, Howard had tried his best to improve his foundation. He had also spent a lot of time and resources to break through to the legendary complete 10th level realm. His purpose was to use the immeasurable calamity to break through to the immortal realm, which was eternal and indestructible. The Destiny Stone tablet had secretly destroyed Howard's hope of reaching the immortal realm. How could Thaling not be angry? That's impossible. After hearing Thaling's explanation, Howard's first reaction was that it was impossible, because he could be said to be the person who understood the limits of his own potential the best. Even if he overdrew all the potential of his body and soul, or even burned more than 10,000 years of his life, he would only have a 50 to 60% chance of reaching the martial god realm. It was impossible for him to reach the peak of the 9th grade martial god realm in a short period of time, let alone reach the peak sovereign realm in the next 1 to 2 years. Yu Haoran, you're underestimating your own potential. After hearing Yu Haoran's rebuttal, Thowling took a deep breath and gave examples one by one. Having been reborn with 100 years of memories from your previous life, you already possess the potential to be a peerless genius. With the support of the destiny of the demon god's tomb, your peerless potential has risen to the level of a monstrous genius. With the protection of the heavenly Tao and the blessing of the world, your monstrous potential has reached its peak. The importance you place on your martial arts foundation, as well as the foundation I laid for you in the early stages, has allowed you to possess the potential to reach the limit of a monster. Martial warrior, martial master, martial great master, martial king, martial emperor, martial saint, martial venerable, and Emperor Wu's advancement to the complete 10th stage realm has given you more potential than a demon. You have reached an unprecedented level, and you have the hope of reaching the immortal realm. At the same time, the fortuitous encounters in the past 3 years, as well as your own hard work and desperation, have given you the hope of reaching the immortal realm. You are not inferior to the king of the divine beasts in the ancient times, nor to the peak of the 9th grade martial god realm in the Middle Ages. After saying this, Thowling directly mobilized the space-time energy of Victor, and then looked through the layers of space barriers at the Destiny Stone tablet that had merged with Yu Haoran's body, as well as the Destiny Calamity Soul that was cultivating on the Destiny Stone tablet. His eyes were filled with intense hatred as he reminded Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran, if it weren't for your great potential, the Destiny Stone tablet wouldn't have chosen you to become the Son of Destiny, and the Destiny Calamity spiritual rat wouldn't have willingly recognized you as its master. Thowling's example and reminder made Yu Haoran's heart burst with endless anger. At the same time, he immediately remembered that he had used the white gas to reach the martial god realm. He couldn't help but worry. Yu Haoran, the reason why I said that it was fortunate that you managed to pull yourself back from the precipice in time was mainly because of the breakthrough in your mental state cultivation. Even though it was due to the overdraft of your potential, it was more due to your own deep accumulation. After hearing Yu Haoran's worry, Thowling finally showed a happy smile on his face. So, you don't have to worry that the breakthrough in your cultivation of mind will have any negative impact on your own potential. Phew! Thowling's comfort made Yu Haoran heave a long sigh of relief. At the same time, he planned to use the destiny aura of the Son of Destiny to remove the subordinate relationship between him and the Destiny Stone tablet and completely eliminate the hidden dangers in his body. But he was stopped by Thowling. According to Thowling's understanding of the Destiny Stone tablet, he had spent a day and a night inspecting it. He found that the Destiny Stone tablet as a whole was very beneficial to him, except for the 5 kinds of gas in the space of the stone tablet, which had hidden dangers that could secretly harm him. As long as he could resist the temptation of the 5 kinds of gas in the space of the stone tablet, the Destiny Stone tablet would still be a rare and heaven-defying auxiliary treasure. Thowling's persuasion combined with the cruel reality of the situation. Although Yu Haoran kept the Destiny Stone tablet in the end, he made the decision not to use the Destiny Stone tablet as much as possible in the future. The Son of Destiny summons personally issued by the Son of Destiny, with the support of the consciousness of heaven behind him, made countless sects, families, and experts from the Tianxian continent rush to the Yushu Temple. Although the underground palace of the Jade Mirage Palace had been temporarily expanded, it was clearly unable to accommodate so many experts who were arriving at any given moment. Helplessly, Ji Xing could only open the human palace of the 3 palaces and let all the experts from the independent cultivators enter. In a pavilion deep in the human palace, the face of the master of the human palace was gloomy as he looked at the bustling square through the window of the pavilion. He looked at the courtyard and pavilion that were almost full of people. The reason for his gloomy expression, besides the disruption of his quiet environment, was that he had already guessed the real purpose of the celestial master Ji Xing and the consciousness of heaven issuing the summons. It was to completely annihilate the 4 great guardian families and the 5 great hidden families. Originally, because he had chosen to be enemies with Yuhauran, who had a bright future, he was full of worry about the future of the Yushu Temple. Now, challenging the 4 great guardian families and the 5 great hidden families was like throwing an egg against a rock. He could not guess the reason why the Celestial Master and the consciousness of heaven were doing this. Although he wanted to go to the Heavenly Palace and question Ji Xing face to face, he thought of the series of precautions Ji Xing had taken against the human palace recently. He thought of some of the disciples and experts that he had carefully cultivated being transferred to the Earth Venerable in the underground palace. The human Venerable knew that even if he took the risk to question Ji Xing, not only would he not get any answers, but he would also anger Ji Xing, whose temperament had changed greatly. It might even bring him a fatal disaster. Unless he woke up in advance the ancestor who was related to Ji Xing by blood and could directly control nearly 80% of the power of the Yushu Temple at the moment of awakening and was fair. Chapter 1842. Yushu Temple in the Human Palace. Looking at the portrait of the Heavenly Palace in his hand, Human Sovereign's eyes flashed with determination. He then took a deep breath, bit the tip of his tongue, and spat out a mouthful of mind's blood. The mind's blood that splattered on the portrait quickly merged into the palaces in the portrait. Then, the palaces in the portrait began to distort gradually, and gradually formed a strong suction force, directly sucking Human Sovereign into the palaces in the portrait. After carefully examining the layout of the palaces, Human Sovereign appeared in front of a secret door on the east side of one of the palaces. He then took out a heart-shaped pendant from his independent space and hung it on the door knocker of the secret door. Then, a small gap appeared between the pendant and the door knocker. Without any hesitation, Human Sovereign used a secret technique to shrink his body and then entered the secret door through the small gap. Behind the secret door was a dark room about 30 square meters in size. Although the light in the dark room was bright, there was no trace of spiritual qi. In the middle of the dark room, there was an ice bed that emitted an extremely low temperature. The temperature of the ice bed was so low that even Human Sovereign, Emperor Wu, who was at the pinnacle of the 3rd grade realm, could feel the chill. A woman sat cross-legged on the ice bed. She had a demonic identity that all men in the world would go crazy for, and a peerless beauty that all women would be jealous of. However, when Human Sovereign looked at the peerless woman, there was only respect from the bottom of his heart, and not a trace of distracting thoughts. Yushu Temple's 999th Human Palace Master, Tianyun, pays his respects to Ancestor Sangyu. He walked to a position 3 meters away from the peerless woman, and then knelt on the ground. Human Sovereign respectfully greeted her, and after kowtowing 3 times, he softly muttered to himself. Grandmaster Sangyu, Tianyun did not intend to awaken Grandmaster so early. However, the Hollow Jade Temple is facing a critical moment of life and death and urgently needs Grandmaster to personally take charge of the situation. Therefore, Tianyun can only disturb Grandmaster's cultivation. After muttering to himself, Human Sovereign continued to take out 3 pill bottles from his independent space, and then poured out the 3 drops of blood stored in the bottles. 3 drops of blood. 1 drop of blood came from the forehead of the Celestial Venerable, 1 drop of blood came from the heart of the Earth Venerable, and 1 drop of blood came from the life essence of the Human Venerable. After using his divine telekinesis to control the 3 drops of blood essence and send them into Sangyu's forehead, heart, and abdomen, Human Sovereign stared at Sangyu nervously. The waiting time was not very long, only about a minute. As the sound of a strong heartbeat came from the dark room, and the cold in the room was replaced by warmth, Sangyu slowly opened her eyes. If one were to say that the slumbering Sangyu was like a goddess above the 9 heavens, giving off a sacred and inviolable aura, then Sangyu was like a goddess. Then, Sangyu, who had opened her eyes, was a peerless beauty capable of causing the downfall of nations and people. She possessed a peerless beauty that could cause all living beings to fall for her, and a bewitching temperament that could cause the world to fall for her. Even the human sovereign, who had always maintained a respectful attitude, almost fell for Sang Yu's beauty and temperament. Fortunately, the human sovereign was prepared. He immediately swallowed the pill on the tip of his tongue and lowered his head, no longer looking at Sang Yu. "Who are you?" Sang Yu asked gently as she looked at the cultured and refined middle-aged man in front of her, who gave off the feeling of a scholar. Hearing Sang Yu's question, the human sovereign hurriedly bowed respectfully and said, "Ren Tianyun of the 999th Human Palace of the Yushu Temple pays his respects to martial ancestor Sang Yu. So you're a descendant of senior brother Guliang." Sang Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness. After a soft sigh, her tone became even gentler. "Human sovereign, please rise." "Many thanks, martial ancestor Sang Yu." After rising, Ren Tianyun hurriedly took out 10 superior grade 5 spirit veins, 36 grade 2 pills from grade 1 to grade 9, and 99 drops of 1,000 medicine mill from his independent space, and presented them to Sang Yu. "Martial ancestor Sang Yu, please use these resources to recover a portion of your strength. After this, Tianyun will bring you to the human palace's dragon vein to help you recover all of your strength as soon as possible." With a wave of her sleeve, Sang Yu put away the spirit veins, pills, and milk. She then absorbed the pure spiritual energy to recover her strength while speaking with a gentle tone. "Human sovereign, for you to awaken me at this time, could it be that the immeasurable calamity has officially begun and the experts hidden in the endless void have returned?" "No." Ren Tianyun shook his head in denial and hurriedly kowtowed to apologize. He then began to explain why he had awakened Sang Yu in advance. "The master of the heavenly palace is actually the child of destiny." Sang Yu muttered to herself with pleasant surprise after hearing Ren Tianyun's explanation. She then raised her head and looked toward the south of the secret room. A mesmerizing purple light appeared in her eyes. Soon after, the purple light pierced through the walls and the barrier of space to see Ji Xing sitting cross-legged on the jade bed. Although he has the aura of the shackles of destiny, he does not have the aura to control destiny. He is not the true child of destiny. Sang Yu used the purple light in her eyes to examine Ji Xing from head to toe. Her voice was filled with confusion as she muttered to herself. "Martial ancestor Sang Yu, what did you say?" Ren Tianyun asked in disbelief after hearing Sang Yu's words. "I said that the current master of the heavenly palace is not the child of destiny who can start the immeasurable calamity." Sang Yu replied with certainty after withdrawing her gaze from Ji Xing. "That's impossible." Ren Tianyun retorted with a shake of his head. His mind took a heavy blow and he staggered back 9 steps. "Martial ancestor Sang Yu, senior martial brother's identity as the child of destiny was divined by the will of the heavens using the star chessboard. It is impossible for there to be a mistake in the calculation." When she heard that Ji Xing's identity as the child of destiny had been deduced by the spirit of 3 annihilation, who had transformed into the consciousness of the heavens, using the relationship of entrapment within the star chessboard, a trace of doubt appeared in Sang Yu's eyes. After all, the reason why the Yushu Temple had been able to pass down the heavenly writ and had always been the leader of the sects was because of the identity of the master of the heavenly palace in ancient times. At that time, it was also the will of the heavens that had been divined by the will of the heavens using the condensed star chessboard. Furthermore, they had supported the Yushu Temple in secret, allowing it to grow from an ordinary sect to the leader of the sections. Although she was doubtful, the identity of the child of destiny had a wide range of implications. Thus, Sang Yu did not dare to be careless and continued to manipulate the purple light. She also used the strength she had just recovered to carefully examine Ji Xing 3 more times. However, the final result was that Ji Xing was not the child of destiny who could control the destiny of all living things, nor did he have the strength to start and end the immeasurable calamity. After hearing Sang Yu's further examination and confirmation, Ren Tianyun, who was as pale as paper, revealed a look of despair. Chapter 1843. Outside of Lanling City, at the edge of the outer valley of Death Valley. After retracting his gaze from Lanling City, Yu Haoran's eyes revealed a complicated and worried expression. Because Lanling City and the outer valley of Death Valley were the starting point of his relationship after his rebirth, and also the ending point of his relationship that had almost completely frozen. And all of this originated from his first relationship after his rebirth, and it was also the first love that had truly moved his heart. Yu Haoran, are you thinking of that girl, were you? Seeing Yu Haoran standing at the edge of the outer valley of Death Valley, Thaling, who had witnessed the change in his relationship with Yu, guessed that he might be thinking of the woman who had once hurt him. Yes, Thaling was the person he trusted the most, and he did not want to hide some of his relationship matters from him. So while Yu Haoran nodded, his eyes revealed a hint of worry. Thaling, I just used the Fushi 8 trigram's innate divination technique to carefully calculate Ruyu's whereabouts and fate. I found that not only is she not on the Tianxian continent, but the divination also shows that she is in a life-threatening crisis. Yu Haoran, don't worry. Even if Ryu is in a life-threatening crisis, not only will she be able to overcome it, she will also obtain a heaven-defying opportunity to be reborn. After hearing Yu Haoran's reason for worry, Thaling smiled and comforted him. Why? Yu Haoran asked in confusion. I want to explain the specific reason first. Now, use the Fushi 8 trigram's innate divination technique to carefully calculate Shi Fangling's whereabouts and fate. Thaling ordered, keeping him in suspense. After 3 years of being together, Yu Haoran was all too familiar with Thaling's method of keeping people in suspense, so he did not continue asking. Instead, he took out the communication jade talisman that he had exchanged with Shi Fangling at the end of the hidden dragon ranking battle in the central region from his storage ring, and then used the remaining aura on the communication jade talisman to calculate Shi Fangling's whereabouts and fate. And the final result was exactly the same as Hiruyu's. Her whereabouts were also unknown, and she was in a life-threatening situation. Thaling, what's going on? Yu Haoran was even more confused as he released his finger that was condensing the divination technique. Yu Haoran, if I'm not wrong, Ryu and Shi Fangling should be in the mysterious Tianji realm. Thaling's eyes showed a hint of envy. Pagoda Spirit, could it be the heaven's secret realm that is ranked second among the top 10 secret realms in the profound sky continent? Yu Haoran cried out in shock. That's right. The tower genie nodded in confirmation and explained with a solemn expression. Yu Haoran, the reason why I didn't let you offend the Prince of Longling back then was mainly because of Shi Fangling behind him. That's because Shi Fangling comes from the Tianji clan that's known for their meticulous calculations. Thaling, could it be the Tianji clan that's known for their divination technique in the Middle Ages? Yu Haoran, who was shocked again, exclaimed in shock. That's right. It's a meticulous Tianji clan. Thaling nodded in confirmation. That's not right. After recovering from his shock, Yu Haoran suddenly remembered that the Tianji clan had revealed too many heaven-defying secrets in the inheritance of the Tianji stone tablet. They had been destroyed by the Heavenly Way's thunder tribulation before the Middle Ages ended. Moreover, the Tianji clan's top practitioner in the Middle Ages, Old Man Xinjing, who claimed to know the past of the chaos and the secrets of the destruction of the heaven and earth, even claimed that none of the Tianji clan's direct descendants survived the Heavenly Tao's thunder tribulation. Yu Haoran, since the Tianji clan has the ability to predict the Heavenly Tao's thunder tribulation, how could they not have predicted the Heavenly Tao's thunder tribulation? Yu Haoran's doubts were the world's understanding of the Tianji clan's final fate. However, Thaling had many interactions with the Tianji clan. Not only did he witness the entire process of the Tianji clan's thunder tribulation, he also used Victor's space-time isolation technique to save one of the direct descendants who was extremely talented in Formula Tao. As for Old Man Xinhai's deduction using Formula Tao, space-time Victor could deceive even the Heavenly Tao's thunder tribulation at its peak, let alone old man Xian Hai, who had just reached supremacy in Formula Dao. Therefore, Thaling was the only person in the world who knew that the Tianji clan hadn't been destroyed and had been passed down until now. Of course, Yu Haoran was now the second person to know this secret. At the same time, Yu Haoran also knew from the Tianji clan that although the Tianji steel's memories were very comprehensive, it wasn't completely correct. Therefore, before confirming a certain secret in the future, he would need to conduct multiple verifications. Yu Haoran, the Heaven's Legacy Secret Realm, is a secret realm created by the ancestor of the Heaven's Legacy clan using a secret technique. Although the secret realm is fraught with danger, it definitely won't harm anyone with the bloodline of the Heaven's Legacy clan, so you don't need to worry about Girl Ryu's safety. The Tower Spirit continued to comfort him after revealing the secret of the Heaven's Legacy clan. Yushu Temple, a secret room in the Heavenly Palace. According to the scripture Pavilion's introduction of the Destiny's Child, after the will of the heavens confirmed that the master of the Heavenly Palace was the Destiny's Child, the Yushu Temple gathered a large amount of fortune in a short period of time. Not only did the cultivation and strength of the disciples and elders of the Heavenly Palace increase by leaps and bounds, but they also encountered countless opportunities when they went out to train. At the same time, as the Destiny's Child, the Celestial Lord displayed a shocking talent that left all the other monstrous geniuses in the dust. Most of the Yushu Temple's heritage and wealth had been accumulated during that period. However, after Ji Yuan, who was also the Child of Destiny, was confirmed as the Child of Destiny by the will of the heavens, not only did he not bring any good news to the sect, but he also caused the Jade Mirage Palace to suffer many setbacks. Their strength and reputation were severely damaged. More importantly, as the protagonist, Ji Yuan, not only did he not display any shocking cultivation talent, he was even surpassed by many rising stars. The most representative of this was Yu Haoran. Compared to Yu Haoran was more like the Destiny's Child who had received the protection of the heavens and earth. After comparing the two generations of the Destiny's Child, Ren Tianyin had already begun to believe the results of Sang Yu's void-breaking secret technique. It was also because he believed that Ji Xing was not the Destiny's Child that Ren Tianyin's heart was filled with endless fear. As the master of the human palace, one of the three palaces, Ren Tianyin was well aware that after the Yushu Temple found out that Ji Xing was the Destiny's Child, they suppressed the various powers and experts of the Tianxin continent, as well as persecuted and hunted down some monstrous geniuses. In the past, the powers and experts who hated the Yushu Temple could only temporarily suppress their hatred, because they feared the Destiny's Child's power of life and death during the immeasurable calamity. Chapter 1844. Yushu Temple, in a secret room of the Celestial Palace. Human Sovereign, sink your energy into your Dantian and calm your mind. Ren Tianyin's face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and his eyes were filled with fear. His aura was fluctuating between strong and weak, as if he was on the verge of cultivation deviation. As Sang Yu called out, she immediately controlled the extreme chill emanating from the ice bed to help him suppress his surging origin energy and soul energy. Many thanks to Ancestor Sang Yu for saving my life. Ren Tianyin, who was gradually awakening from his panic, hurriedly cupped his fists in thanks. "It's fine," Sang Yu solemnly asked after waving her hand to indicate that Ren Tianyin didn't need to be so polite. "Human Sovereign, what in the world happened to make you, an early-stage Emperor Wu rank 7, fall into cultivation deviation? As a godly spirit expert at the Martial God Realm and the Grand Master of the Hollow Jade Palace in recent times, Sang Yu was extremely proud. Ordinary experts and monstrous geniuses would never receive her courteous treatment. The reason Ren Tianyin was able to gain her favor was because she discovered that Ren Tianyin was different from ordinary monstrous geniuses. He clearly had the strength to break into higher realms, but he had been desperately suppressing his potential to break through. Ren Tianyin's mental cultivation was 4 minor levels above his own. indicating that he was someone who understood how to eliminate the hidden dangers of cultivation and was able to remain calm in the face of trouble. It was precisely because Ren Tianyun was so outstanding that Sangyu was very puzzled by his falling into a state of qi deviation. Ancestor Sangyu. The Yushu Temple is on the verge of destruction. Sangyu is not only the Grand Master of the Hollow Jade Palace, but she was also the Grand Master with the highest cultivation and the strongest strength among the remaining Grand Masters. Thus, Ren Tianyun hurriedly explained the danger that the Yushu Temple was in. After hearing Ren Tianyun's account and his own calculations, Sangyu's solemn expression was replaced by a grim one, and a hint of killing intent began to appear in her eyes. The master of the Yushu Temple's heavenly palace in recent times, after being recognized as the child of destiny by the will of the heavens, did not show any arrogance. Instead, he became more humble and low-key, and tried his best to maintain a friendly relationship with all the top forces and experts. This was also the main reason why most of the inherited families were able to survive after the collapse of the ancient era. It was precisely because of the Celestial Lord's benevolence towards others in recent times that the Yushu Temple, which had lost the protection of the Destiny's Child and the will of the heavens, was able to maintain its prestige at its peak. Furthermore, it was respected by the guardian families and the hidden families. As for the current master of the heavenly palace, the heavenly venerable, not only was he stupid and ignorant, but he was also arrogant and conceited. He was simply courting death. Even if one was truly the child of destiny and was protected by the fortune of heaven and earth, how could the guardian clans that had existed since ancient times and the hidden clans that had existed since the Middle Ages not have the means to control fate and the strength to resist the will of the heavens? Even if you have the support of the will of heaven, allowing you to temporarily suppress the guardian families and the hidden families, what about after the immeasurable calamity? Human sovereign, what do you have in mind? Saying you did not understand the changes in the overall situation of the Tianxin continent, nor did she know how much the top forces and experts hated the Yushu Temple. For the moment, saying you did not know how to deal with the predicament her sect was in. She could only listen to Ren Tianyun's opinion. Branch Palace. Death Valley. Since he had already confirmed that he, Ruyu, and Shi Fangling were not in danger of dying, Yu Haoran put away the complicated and worried feelings in his heart and stepped into the outer valley of Death Valley. He only stopped for a few seconds in front of the grass patch where he had parted ways with Hiruyu. Then, using the power of law of the two flashes, he sped towards the inner valley of Death Valley. However, just as he crossed the stream that separated the inner valley from the outer valley, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. This was because there were two familiar faces standing by the south side of the stream. However, he did not have much interaction with these two familiar faces. The only reason why he still remembered them was because these two familiar faces were inextricably linked to Hiruyu. Therefore, after stopping for less than 3 seconds, Yu Haoran continued to rush towards the inner valley of Death Valley. Roar! Just as he arrived at the inner valley of Death Valley where he had first encountered the long-armed ape, an angry roar suddenly came from the depths of the inner valley. Oh no, Senior Long-Armed Ape is in danger. The familiar roar and the weakness that seeped out of the angry roar made Yu Haoran's expression change abruptly. After he knew that something was wrong, he immediately rushed towards the depths of the inner valley at his maximum speed. Boom! Just as Yu Haoran arrived in front of a group of rocks in the inner valley, an incomparably huge body suddenly crashed in front of him and directly smashed a deep pit that was dozens of meters deep. Senior, are you okay? Yu Haoran asked with concern as he entered the deep pit in a flash and looked at the long-armed ape whose body had shrunk to more than 2 meters. Young friend, it's you. The long-armed ape, who had quickly suppressed the injuries in its body, saw the young human squatting in front of it. It was Yu Haoran who had a good relationship with it, and immediately called out in surprise. Young friend, be careful behind you. But immediately, its expression changed abruptly as it reminded. Without the slightest hesitation, the celestial trapping sword that appeared in his hand instantly combined with a divine level sword technique from the Destiny Stone Tablet's memory inheritance, directly blasted towards the opponent who had sneakily attacked him. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening roar, Howren, who was holding the celestial slashing sword, slightly trembled a few times, and the opponent who had sneakily attacked him was directly blasted into the air. Young friend, your strength. In a hasty attack, not only did he directly blast away the opponent who could seriously injure him, but he also did not have any changes to his body. Looking at Howren, who was emitting a sharp sword aura, the long-armed ape's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. Senior, leave the deep pit first. Howren quickly took out a level 1 sacred healing pill and fed it to the long-armed ape. Then, using the method of Yuanli wrapping it up, he directly brought it out of the deep pit. After that, he raised his head and looked at the opponent who had once again charged towards him in midair. It was a middle-aged expert in green whose cultivation had reached the peak of level 6 of Emperor Wu. Who are you? Howren asked indifferently. Young man, who are you? As the middle-aged expert in green asked the same question, his gaze towards the celestial trapping sword revealed an intense look of greed. Since you don't want to say, then go ahead. After receiving the Destiny Stone Tablet's memory inheritance, his horizons and experience had increased, so he did not even take a divine spirit expert who had just entered the martial god realm seriously. Therefore, Howren did not bother to continue inquiring about the other party's background. He mobilized 70% of his strength, combined with the celestial trapping sword's divine level sword technique, and directly attacked the opponent's vital points. Young man, don't be arrogant. Chapter 1845. In the inner valley of Death Valley. This is the Khanate spiritual treasure, sea-suppressing divine pearl. Howren was pleasantly surprised when he saw the 3 black pearls that the green-robed man took out. He had obtained 2 sea-suppressing divine pearls from the Plum Blossom Elder's body before the 5 regions hidden dragon ranking battle. He had obtained 3 sea-suppressing divine pearls from Zhou Yu's after the 5 regions hidden dragon ranking battle. If he could snatch 3 more sea-suppressing divine pearls from the green-clothed middle-aged powerhouse, then he would have 8 sea-suppressing divine pearls, accounting for 1/3 of the total number. According to Thalink's introduction of the sea-suppressing divine pearls, as long as he could obtain 1/3 of the total, the origin energy in the sea-suppressing divine pearls would be able to fuse and upgrade to a top-notch divine-level weapon that could attack and defend. At the same time, he could use the 8 sea-suppressing divine pearls to set up an independent space that was suitable for cultivation and concealment. Therefore, when the green-robed man used the 3 sea-suppressing divine pearls to block the sharp sword chi, Howren used 80% of his strength and continued to use the celestial trapping sword to perform the divine-level sword technique. He formed a sharp sword chi that was as powerful as Emperor Wu's peak 9th-level sword technique. The green-robed man, who had used the 3 sea-suppressing divine pearls to block the sharp sword chi with great difficulty, felt the second, even more powerful sword chi before he could even catch his breath. This caused his expression to change involuntarily. At the same time, he immediately overdrew a portion of his origin power and soul power to increase the defensive power of the sea-suppressing divine pearl. He used it to block the sharp sword chi that was at the peak of rank 9 martial emperor. When the sharp sword chi formed by the second sword technique slashed towards the green-robed man, Howren continued to use 90% of his strength to perform the 3rd divine-level sword technique. He finally formed a sharp sword chi that was as powerful as a demigod's. Poof, poof, poof. Even though he used a portion of his origin energy and soul power, even though the defense formed by the 3 sea-suppressing divine pearls was not inferior to a divine weapon, it was limited by his own strength. When faced with Emperor Wu's sharp sword chi that was as powerful as a peak 9th-level sword technique, the green-robed man was forced 9 steps back and spat out 3rd-level blood. At the same time, his aura became much weaker. However, when he sensed the sharp sword chi condensed by Howren's 3rd sword technique, and its power reached the level of a demigod, The middle-aged expert's face instantly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. He hurriedly threatened loudly. "Kid, I'm still the sect master of Xiandao School, one of the 7 top sects in the Tianxin continent. If you dare to hurt me, my martial god realm divine spirit expert of Xiandao School will definitely not let you go." After hearing the middle-aged man's threat, Yu Haoran did not immediately disperse the sharp sword chi formed by the third sword technique. Instead, he used his mind to weaken the power of the sword chi. In this way, he could ensure that the sword chi could break the defense formed by the sea-suppressing divine pearls and severely injure the green-robed man, but it would not directly kill him. This was because he had stayed at Xiandao School for a period of time in his previous life. He was quite familiar with the higher-ups of Xiandao School. He clearly remembered that the sect master of Xiandao School was Tao Fengye, who was known as Jian Rufeng. Why did the middle-aged expert in front of him call himself the sect master of Xiandao School? Poof! After the sharp sword chi directly tore through the defense formed by the 3 sea-suppressing divine pearls, it slammed heavily into the green-robed man's chest. The sharp sword chi, which only had 30% of its power left, destroyed the middle-aged expert's upper Emperor Realm defensive weapon and caused him to be severely injured. At the same time, he spat out 9 mouthfuls of blood. After suffering 2 serious injuries in a row, the green-robed man's face instantly turned pale. At the same time, his strength fell directly to the early 9th grade martial venerable. In a flash, he appeared in front of the green-robed man. After taking the 3 sea-suppressing divine pearls, he held the celestial slashing sword in his hand and pointed it at the green-robed man's forehead. Yu Haoran asked coldly, "Where is Tao Fengye? Who are you? What is your relationship with Tao?" Even the defense formed by the sea-suppressing divine pearls could be easily broken. The green-robed man, whose strength had fallen to the martial venerable realm, had already planned to bow his head and admit defeat. However, when he heard Yu Haoran mention the previous sect master of Xiandao School, Tao Fengye, he immediately asked nervously, "Don't care who I am. Answer my question first." The tip of the celestial trapping sword was directly pressed against the man's forehead. Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with a cold light as he asked. "Sect Master Tao was accidentally killed 1.5 months ago. Therefore, I have temporarily taken over the position of the sect master of Xiandao School." Feeling the sharp sword chi emitted by the celestial trapping sword and the impact on the space barrier of the Sea of Consciousness, the green-robed man, who was afraid of death, quickly replied, "What accident? Why can you take over the position of the sect master and not the 2 deputy sect masters?" Yu Haoran continued to ask. The reason why Tao Fengye was accidentally killed was not because he had any deep feelings for him, but because he did not receive any news about the death of the sect masters of the 7 top sects and the succession of a new sect master. This was too abnormal for him. When Tao Fengye was trying to break through to the realm of Emperor Wu, he accidentally went berserk. In the end, he suffered from the backlash of his inner demon and died. The green-robed man raised his hand to wipe the remaining blood at the corner of his mouth to hide the panic in his eyes. He replied with a seemingly reasonable explanation. "The reason why I can take over the position of the sect master is because the ancestor of the martial god, who belongs to my lineage, woke up in advance and was personally appointed by him." Although the cyan-clad, middle-aged expert's explanation sounded reasonable, Yu Haoran kept getting the feeling that something was amiss. He could not stop himself from wondering what was amiss about it. However, at this moment, a sense of danger suddenly enveloped his heart. Although it was dangerous, it was not fatal. Therefore, Yu Haoran did not avoid the danger at all. He turned his head and saw a young man of about 20 years old, wearing a long brocade robe. He was holding a superior grade venerable realm sword and was stabbing at the vital part of his back. Emperor Wu's physical body, which was at the peak of the complete 10th grade realm, allowed him to ignore any attack below the martial Emperor realm, including venerable realm weapons. Therefore, when the tip of the sword stabbed at the vital part of his back, his physical body instinctively formed a defense and directly repelled the sword. At the same time, the strong rebound force caused the young man, who had just reached the early first-grade martial venerable realm, to retreat 3 steps and spit out a mouthful of blood. "You Howren! You Howren!" Just as Howren turned his head to look at the young man in the brocade robe, 2 soft and pleasant voices suddenly sounded from below. Without looking down, Howren knew that the 2 soft and pleasant voices were from He Yu and He Ting, who had once asked him to help investigate the hatred of the extermination of their clan. At the same time, they were also the 2 acquaintances he had met when he passed by the stream. "You are Howren." When he heard Yu and He Ting point out the true origin of the blue-robed young man, the green-robed middle-aged man cried out with fear in his eyes. Chapter 1846. In the inner valley of Death Valley. Boom! Just as Howren was about to capture the escaping young man, a black shadow soared into the sky and blocked the path of the young man with lightning speed. After which, the shadow swung its large palm and slammed the young man heavily into the rubble. "You can leave as well." Seeing long-armed ape heavily injure the brocade-clothed, long-gowned youth, and then lowering his head to look at the He sisters who had slightly panicked expressions, Howren used the back of the immortal trapping sword to similarly heavily slap the green-clothed, middle-aged expert into the rubble below. "You Shi Xiao! You Shi Xiao!" Seeing Howren slowly landing on the ground, He Yu and He Ting looked at each other and carefully went up to greet him. "Junior sisters, let's catch up later." After nodding to He Yu and He Ting with a gentle expression, Howren walked up to the long-armed ape and asked with a slight frown, "Senior, what happened?" While he was feeding the long-armed ape the sacred healing pill, he had already used his divine thought to check the other party's condition and strength. He knew that the long-armed ape was already at the peak of the 7th stage martial emperor realm. Whether it was his own cultivation, strength, or the bloodline and potential of the inheritance, the middle-aged expert in green was no match for the long-armed ape. Then, why did the middle-aged expert in green dare to provoke the powerful long-armed ape? Why was the long-armed ape not a match for the middle-aged expert in green? After hearing Howren's question, the long-armed ape gloomily took out a 5 to 6 centimeters long spiritual herb that emitted a tempting fragrance from the independent space. This is the 2nd stage, 9th rank fragrant eroding grass. Seeing the green grass lying in the long-armed ape's palm, Howren was wild with joy and finally understood why the long-armed ape was no match for the middle-aged expert in green. The fragrant eroding grass, also known as the evil spiritual herb, was not only an immortal herb used to improve one's state of mind, but it was also a poisonous sacred herb that could be fatal. However, the difference between an immortal herb and a poisonous herb depended on the target of the fragrant eroding grass. If it was consumed by a human warrior, it would be an immortal herb that could greatly improve one's state of mind. If it was consumed by other creatures, it would continuously weaken their strength and eventually lead to the destruction of their soul. That's right, it's the fragrant eroding grass that can continuously weaken my strength. As he nodded to confirm, the long-armed ape's eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at the middle-aged expert in green who was recovering his strength with the help of the elixir. He used Nash's teeth as he explained the entire process of being set. In the inner valley of Death Valley, other than the gifted long-armed apes, there were many other types of ordinary apes. Although these apes had no blood relations with the long-armed ape, the tens of thousands of years of solitary cultivation and the ape's liking for crowds made him very protective of these ordinary apes around him. Not only did he guide them in their cultivation, but he also protected them at all times. Back then, the long-armed ape had chased after the python that had comprehended the law of nothingness because the python had swallowed an ordinary ape that had just been born not long ago. Just an hour ago, a talented and powerful Saint Realm ape had unexpectedly obtained a level 2, level 1 Snow Peak Spirit Peach and happily presented it to the long-armed ape. The long-armed ape didn't suspect anything and immediately enjoyed it. Fortunately, the level 2, level 1 Snow Peak Spirit Peach was the size of a wash basin. It wasn't suitable to be eaten directly, so the long-armed ape could only chew on it. He happened to see the fragrant, eroding grass that had been transplanted into the Snow Peak Spirit Peach using a special method. Although he hadn't eaten the fragrant, eroding grass by accident, he had been poisoned by the fragrant, eroding grass's scent. This caused him to be at the peak of the 7th grade, Great Emperor realm, and only be able to unleash the strength of Emperor Wu. This was also the reason why the long-armed ape wasn't a match for the middle-aged expert in green. Senior, can you give this fragrant, eroding grass to me? After understanding how the long-armed ape had been framed, Yu Haoran wanted to know why the middle-aged expert in green had framed the long-armed ape. However, he was more anxious to obtain the fragrant, eroding grass. Because he had used the white gas to break through to the martial god realm in the space within the Destiny Stone Steel, he had overdrawn his potential to a certain extent. Therefore, he needed to use supplementary methods to make up for the overdrawn potential. The Level 2, Level 9 fragrant, eroding grass could not only make up for the overdrawn potential, but could also be used with 8 supplementary medicinal ingredients to refine a divine pill that could greatly improve one's mental state. It was just enough to satisfy his current needs. Here, the long-armed ape didn't hesitate and directly handed the fragrant, eroding grass to Yu Haoran. Thank you, Senior. Yu Haoran hurriedly expressed his gratitude and put away the fragrant, eroding grass. He then turned his gaze to the middle-aged expert in green. Seeing Yu Haoran's gaze, the middle-aged expert in green, who was healing himself with the help of medicinal pills, suddenly became nervous. He knew that Yu Haoran had the strength to kill a godly spirit expert who had just entered the martial god realm. Therefore, he didn't dare to run away on his own for fear of arousing Yu Haoran's killing intent. He knew that Yu Haoran was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Therefore, he was considering whether he should tell the truth to resolve Yu Haoran's anger. Yu Haoran asked coldly as he appeared in front of the middle-aged expert in green in a flash and pointed the celestial trapping sword at the middle-aged expert's forehead once again. Speak. Why did you use the fragrant, eroding grass to frame Senior? In response to Prince Consort's question, using the fragrant, eroding grass to frame the long-armed ape was an order from my family's ancestor. After thinking for a short while, the middle-aged expert in green, who was afraid of death, finally chose to tell the truth in order to resolve Yu Haoran's anger and save his own life. What's the reason? Yu Haoran asked closely. Because my family's ancestor wanted to use the long-armed ape's blood essence to cultivate a secret technique that could achieve the speed of a square inch, as well as the secret technique of the universe in the palm. The middle-aged expert in green quickly confessed. Among the 4 great spiritual monkeys of the Middle Ages, the long-armed ape had the ability to control the sun and moon, shrink 1,000 mountains, distinguish between right and wrong, and manipulate the universe. Therefore, the blood essence of the long-armed ape, which had inherited the bloodline of the long-armed ape, also contained these 4 powerful abilities. Now, the long-armed ape had only activated one of the 4 abilities, which was the ability to control the sun and moon. Therefore, after learning about the sinister intentions of the other party's ancestor, Yu Haoran's heart immediately surged with a strong, murderous intent. However, he suppressed it in time. This was because when he saw the fragrant, eroding grass that could continuously weaken the strength of strange beasts, he suddenly realized that the middle-aged man was describing the reason why he had become the Xiandao school's overlord was abnormal. Chapter 1847. In the inner valley of Death Valley, the Xiaming mental cultivation method placed a lot of emphasis on the tempering of one's foundation and state of mind. It paid particular attention to the balanced advancement of various auxiliary realms. It was basically impossible for one to go berserk during the process of breaking through realms. Moreover, Tao Fengye was the sect master of top sect. The breakthrough of Emperor Wu's realm could be said to be of utmost importance to the Xiandao school. Emperor Wu's almighty experts, the demigod realm false god experts, and the martial god realm divine spirit experts would definitely be on guard. Then, Even if Tao Fengye was unlucky and Emperor Wu went berserk during the process of breaking through realms, the martial God Realm Divine Spirit experts who were on guard would definitely be able to lend a hand. It was absolutely impossible for them to watch Tao Fengye die from the backlash of his inner demons. Therefore, Tao Fengye's death was definitely due to a man-made accident. Moreover, this accident must have involved a very big conspiracy behind it. Speak. How did Sect Master Tao die? Yu Haoran suddenly took a step forward and pressed the tip of the celestial trapping sword directly on the forehead of the middle-aged expert in green robes. Prince Consort, didn't I just say that Sect Master Tao died from the backlash of Emperor Wu's inner demons during the process of breaking through realms? Seeing that Yu Haoran had started to investigate the cause of Tao Fengye's death again, the middle-aged expert in green robes' heart trembled slightly. However, he knew that Tao Fengye's death involved a lot of people. He absolutely could not leak the slightest bit of information. Otherwise, it would easily cause chaos in the Tianxin continent. Therefore, the middle-aged expert in green robes pretended to be calm as he replied, "It seems that you won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. You won't turn back until you hit the southern wall." Seeing that the middle-aged expert in green robes was pretending to be calm, Yu Haoran's eyes were filled with disdain and ridicule. He began to use the Xianming mental cultivation method and Tao Fengye's identity to rebuke and question him one by one. In the face of Yu Haoran's rebuttal, a trace of panic flashed in the eyes of the middle-aged man in green. He immediately thought of taking the risk to escape. Otherwise, if he revealed the true cause of Tao Fengye's death, he would also die. However, if he wanted to take the risk of escaping, he had to think of a way to avoid the divine sword that was pressed against his forehead. Thus, the green-robed middle-aged man rolled his eyes and immediately thought of a plan. "Prince Consort, your eyes are indeed as sharp as torches. You were able to tell that Tao Fengye had died an unnatural death from his identity and cultivation method. I am sincerely convinced." Using the action of sighing and shaking his head, the green-robed middle-aged expert quietly retreated half a foot, avoiding the sharp sword energy emitted from the tip of the immortal trapping sword. At the same time, he secretly used his mind to activate the escape talisman given to him by the ancestor in his storage ring. At the same time, he pretended to be hesitant to say something to attract Yu Haoran's attention. "Yu Haoran, this guy wants to use the escape talisman that contains the mysteries of the law to escape." Just as the green-robed, middle-aged expert secretly activated the top escape talisman in his storage ring, Thowing, who had simply tempered the 3 sea-calming divine pearls, immediately reminded him. "I know." After responding without any surprise, Yu Haoran still looked coldly at the green-robed, middle-aged expert. Yushu Temple, in the dark room of the Heavenly Palace. In the face of Sang Yu's interrogation, Ren Tianyun lowered his head and thought for a while. Branch Palace. Sang Yu's body trembled slightly as she looked at Ren Tianyun with an extremely shocked expression in her eyes. The so-called branch palaces were actually exactly the same as a branch family. Although they all belonged to the Jade Virtual Palace in name, they were in charge of everything in the palace, including the autonomy of financial rights, personnel appointments, and the way they handle matters. When the Yushu Temple was at its peak, rashly proposing the idea of a branch palace was bound to offend the celestial masters and the earthly masters, as well as most of the experts in the 3 palaces. In the end, he would end up being betrayed by everyone. But now the Yushu Temple was facing a crisis of extinction. It seemed that the only way to preserve the inheritance of the Yushu Temple was through the branch palace. But Ren Tianyin would have to bear too many grievances. Human sovereign, if you were the master of the Heavenly Palace, not only would the Yushu Temple not be faced with a crisis of extinction, but the overall development of the situation would be many times better than it is now. Sang Yu could not help but sigh with emotion as her shocked expression was quickly replaced by respect. Grandmaster Sheng Yu, the branch palace is only the first step to resolving the crisis facing the Yushu Temple. In the face of Sheng Yu's praise, Ren Tianyun's expression did not change at all. The second step to resolving the crisis facing the Yushu Temple is how to ensure that the elite disciples of the three palaces with peerless and monstrous talents eventually belong to the human palace and lead them away from the Yushu Temple temporarily. Human sovereign, leave this to me. Even if the celestial masters and earthly masters were destroyed, and even if all the top experts of the heavenly palace and the underground palace died, as long as they could protect the elite disciples with peerless and monstrous talents, not only would the inheritance of the Yushu Temple not be broken, but they would also have a chance to rise again. Therefore, Sang Yu, who also intended to join the human palace, began to sincerely give advice to Ren Tianyin. Then I'll have to trouble you, Grandmaster Sang Yu. Hearing that Sang Yu was willing to take on the heavy responsibility of recruiting peerless and monstrous talents, Ren Tianyin secretly breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to express his gratitude. Then, he turned to look to the east with a hesitant look in his eyes. Human sovereign, what's wrong? Sang Yu asked in confusion when she saw Ren Tianyin looking to the east in confusion. Martial ancestor Sang Yu, whether or not the Hollow Jade Temple can survive the crisis of sect annihilation and the calamity of the immeasurable calamity, we still need the support of one person. Ren Tianyin replied with a complicated expression as he continued to watch the east. Who? After hearing Ren Tianyin's reply, Sang Yu immediately asked excitedly. The support of one person can protect the inheritance of top sect. A genius who possesses talent that surpasses that of monstrous talents. A genius who could be called the #1 person in the Tianxian continent in both martial arts and auxiliary cultivation. A genius who has grown rapidly from adversity. A genius who is worthy of our trust. Ren Tianyin sighed with admiration after he withdrew his gaze from the east. Human sovereign, who is this person? Ren Tianyin's continuous praise made Sang Yu even more eager to know who this person was. Yu Haoran, the prince consort of the Emperor Qin Kingdom. At the age of 20, he has the cultivation of the peak of the 9th level of the Emperor Wu. He is also a grandmaster in the art of magic, a formation emperor in the art of formations, and a pill deity in the art of alchemy. Ren Tianyin briefly introduced Yu Haoran's achievements. Human sovereign, where is Yu Haoran right now? Ren Tianyin's introduction of Yu Haoran's achievements gave Sang Yu a faint sense of familiarity. She felt that he was very similar to a certain monstrous genius from ancient times. She couldn't wait to see Yu Haoran. There is a residence floating in the air above Fengrun City on the border between the eastern and southern regions. Yu Haoran should be in that residence right now. Chapter 1848. Yushu Temple in the dark room of the Heavenly Palace. When Ren Tianyin pointed out Yu Haoran's exact location, Sang Yu did not want to wait any longer. She immediately mobilized her divine sense to check carefully. After all, the divine sense of an early-stage, 9th-grade martial god could cover almost an entire region. It could extend to Fengrun City, which was on the border between the eastern and southern regions. However, when her divine sense reached the edge of the Yushu Temple's defensive formation, a terrifying power filled with heavenly might struck fear into her heart. She quickly retracted her divine sense. Ancestor Sang Yu, what's wrong? Ren Tianyin asked nervously when he saw Sang Yu's face darken and her eyes radiate a strong, murderous aura. Someone is secretly monitoring the Yushu Temple. Sang Yu replied through gritted teeth. Who would dare to provoke the Yushu Temple at this time? Ren Tianyin asked in disbelief. After all, the Yushu Temple was at the peak of its power, both in terms of reputation and strength, as the child of destiny and the secret protection of the heavenly consciousness. At this moment, even the experts of the 4 great guardian families and the 5 great hidden families, as well as the old monsters hidden in the dark, had to do their best to avoid the Yushu Temple. Who would be so suicidal as to provoke the Yushu Temple and the heavenly consciousness at this time? The heavenly consciousness? Sang Yu replied with a gloomy face. Sizzle. Ren Tianyin sucked in a breath when he heard Sang Yu's reply. His expression gradually turned ugly. According to the agreement between the heavenly consciousness and Ji Xing, the heavenly consciousness of the three annihilators would only set rules that were beneficial to the development of the Yushu Temple. It would never interfere in any disputes on the Tianxian continent. Now that the heavenly consciousness had begun to secretly monitor the Yushu Temple, it meant that the three annihilators had not only planned to intervene in the situation on the Tianxian continent, but also did not abide by their agreement with Ji Xing. The deeper reason was that the three annihilators had also realized Ji Xing's identity as the child of destiny and were preparing to get rid of him after he had outlived his usefulness. Ancestor Sangyu, how much more time do you need to return to your peak condition? Since the heavenly consciousness of Spirit Destroyer had decided to give up on Ji Xing and the Yushu Temple, he had to hurry up and carry out the three-step plan that he had just formulated. Therefore, Ren Tianyin quickly adjusted his state of mind and quickly asked, "Due to the fact that I've been sleeping for far too long, my body and spirit are in an extremely overdrawn state. It'll take at least half a year for me to return to my peak condition," Sangyu, who also understood the urgency of the situation, replied with some helplessness. Martial Ancestor Sangyu, how long will it take to recover to the early 7th grade Martial God Realm? Half a year was too long. By that time, the Yushu Temple would have already been destroyed by the heavens. Therefore, Ren Tianyun, who was unwilling to give up, could only lower the difficulty and continue to ask questions. "It will take about 10 days, Sangyu replied after some consideration. "How about this?" The time limit set by the order was 7 days. It would take at least 3 to 5 days to integrate the sex and family forces that had arrived at the Yushu Temple, as well as the experts among the rogue cultivators. After a short moment of consideration, Ren Tianyun instructed, "Martial Ancestor Sangyu, in 10 days, try your best to recruit all the elite disciples under the age of 20 from the Heavenly Palace and the Earth Palace with exceptional cultivation talent, and make them join the Human Palace willingly. I'll take care of the branch palaces and the plan to obtain Yuharan support." Human Sovereign, the moment I woke up, I'm afraid that the Celestial Master already knew what happened here. If the Celestial Master finds out about your deviant plan, he will definitely do you harm. Sangyu reminded him worriedly when she saw that Ren Tianyun had taken the initiative to take on the most dangerous task in the plan. Martial Ancestor Sangyu, have you forgotten the methods that the three palace masters are good at? Ren Tianyun reminded her with a smile. So that's how it is. After hearing Ren Tianyun's reminder, Sangyu nodded in realization. Among the three palaces in the Yushu Temple, the Heavenly Palace was good at force, the Earth Palace was good at management, and the Human Palace was good at hypocrisy. With Emperor Wu's cultivation at the peak of level 3, as long as Ren Tianyun used a special hypocrisy secret method, he might even be able to deceive the consciousness of heaven, let alone the earthly master of the Heavenly Palace. In the inner valley of Death Valley, seeing that Yuharan did not discover that he had secretly activated the top escape talisman given by his ancestor, the middle-aged expert in Cyan was secretly proud. He activated the top escape talisman with his mind at a faster speed. Soon, the cyan light formed by the top escape talisman left the storage ring and quickly wrapped around the middle-aged expert in Cyan. Yuharan, if you want to know how Tao Fingye died, then come to the gate of my Xiandao school in person. Feeling that the cyan light contained a huge amount of energy that was quickly tearing through the void, the middle-aged expert in Cyan was extremely proud of himself and provoked him. "Father, take me with you." Seeing that the cyan light had wrapped around the middle-aged expert in Cyan, the young man in brocade who had just woken up hurriedly reminded him. Unfortunately, not only did the middle-aged expert in Cyan have no intention of helping him, but he also looked at the young man in brocade with a cold and ruthless gaze. As the saying goes, even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. The middle-aged expert in Cyan ignored his own son's cry for help, which was enough to show how cold-blooded and ruthless he was. This also made Yuharan feel even less of a psychological burden for what he was going to do next. Originally, I was not willing to use the soul-searching secret method to deal with you, because you're the new sect master of Xiandao School. Yu Haoran did not panic at all because the top escape talisman had been completely activated. As he slowly put away the celestial trapping sword, he walked toward the middle-aged expert in cyan with a face full of pity. But now it seems, you with the surname Yu, stop bluffing. The escape talisman I activated just now was refined by my ancestor, who was a peak 7th grade martial god, using the profound mysteries of the law of speed and speed that he comprehended. Although Yu Haoran's overly calm actions made the middle-aged expert in cyan faintly feel that something was wrong, when he thought of the origin of the top talisman he had just activated, he continued to provoke him arrogantly. Yu Haoran, you are only at the peak of the 9th grade Emperor Wu's cultivation. Even if you were a peak 9th grade martial god, you wouldn't be able to stop me at this moment. Standing half a meter away from the middle-aged expert in cyan, Yu Haoran asked with a cold smile, "Is that so?" "That's right." Just as he nodded to confirm, the cyan light had just finished tearing through the void and finally locating him. Therefore, the middle-aged expert in cyan revealed a complacent smile and waved goodbye to Yu Haoran. Chapter 1849. In the inner valley of Death Valley. What's going on? The green-robed middle-aged expert, who was supposed to leave with the green light, remained where he was after seeing the green light disappear. His face was full of disbelief. When fate is being manipulated, even a supreme being at the supremacy level who uses the escape talisman refined with the mystery of the law of space won't be able to escape under my nose. Accompanied by Yu Haoran's mocking voice, the green-robed middle-aged expert suddenly felt a terrifying force rush into his consciousness space, and then he fainted completely. I see. After hearing Yu Haoran's mocking explanation, Thowling finally understood why he had not allowed him to attack just now. After all, with the help of the Destiny Stone Tablet and the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat's control of fate, it was as easy as flipping one's hand to manipulate the fate of a martial artist at the peak of level 3 of Emperor Wu's cultivation. At the same time, the means displayed by the Destiny Stone Tablet and the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat made Thowling feel a grave danger. He knew that he had to recover his cultivation as a supremacy as soon as possible to continue consolidating his position in Yu Haoran's mind. After using the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat to manipulate the green-robed middle-aged expert's fate and weaken the instinctive resistance of his spirit, Yu Haoran easily read all the memories in his opponent's mind. His originally calm expression gradually darkened, and his eyes revealed a strong, murderous intent. Yu Haoran, what's going on? Seeing Yu Haoran withdraw his left hand from the green-robed, middle-aged expert's head, Thowling could not help but ask curiously in his heart. Thowling, although Tao Fingya died in the process of breaking through to the next realm, the reason for the backlash was not that his cultivation was insufficient, nor was it that his accumulation was insufficient. After hearing Thowling's question, Yu Haoran replied with gritted teeth. It was because Su Wanru of the Green Hill Fox Tribe used the Fox Tribe's secret method of confusion to arouse Tao Fingya's most primitive inner thoughts. Finally, under the guidance of the boiling qi and blood, he fell into qigong deviation. Thowling, who knew Su Wanru better, could not help but frown after hearing Yu Haoran's explanation. He knew that the various restrictions of the secret method that Su Wanru used to confuse experts like Emperor Wu could not be used easily, so he asked with some confusion. Yu Haoran, as the master of Xiandao school, when Tao Fingya broke through to the martial god realm, he must have been accompanied by Emperor Wu, demigods, and Martial. However, before he could finish his question, Thowling immediately realized that he had overlooked a very important issue, which was the mole who could work together with Su Wanru. Hua Xingjie, a 7th-level martial god, a supreme elder of Xiandao school in recent times, and one of Su Wanru's countless male companions. Although Thowling had already guessed the reason why Su Wanru was able to use the secret method of confusion, he certainly did not know who the mole was, so Yu Haoran continued his topic. It was with Hua Shengjie's full cooperation that Su Wanru not only successfully used the secret method of Qigong deviation to make Tao Fingye fall into Qigong deviation, but also used the charm to control nearly two-thirds of the Xiandao school's higher-ups. At this moment, it is not an exaggeration to say that Xiandao School is an affiliated force of the Green Hill Fox tribe. Yu Haoran, it seems that the situation in the Tianxian continent is about to fall into chaos. After hearing Yu Haoran's further explanation, Thowling thought of the summoning order that the Yushu Temple had just issued, as well as the impending birth of the ancient god tribe, ancient demon tribe, and ancient demon tribe. He could not help but sigh. The more chaotic the Tianxian continent is, the more destructive aura will be formed, and the easier will be to start the immeasurable calamity. This is actually a good thing for me. After replying to Thowling's sigh, Yu Haoran directly lifted his foot and crushed the head and soul of the middle-aged expert in green. He then turned around and walked toward He Yu and He Ting, who both looked very nervous. Yu Shixiao, seeing Yu Haoran walking toward them, He Yu, who had a slightly better mentality, braced himself and called out to him. He Ting, on the other hand, hid behind He Yu with a pale face. My two junior sisters. After cupping his hands to return the greeting, Yu Haoran looked at He Yu and He Ting, who were both in the early stage of martial ancestor realm. However, their appearances were even more outstanding. A complicated expression appeared in his eyes. Back then, after learning about He Ruyu's tragic fate, He Yu and He Ting, who knew that they could not take revenge, did not accept his kind arrangement to join the 100 Chi Gate. Instead, they went to the Heart Moon sect, an affiliated sect of the 100 Chi Gate. Later, when he almost destroyed the Heart Moon sect because of Zhang Ro, he used his divine thought to search for the whereabouts of He Yu and He Ting, intending to bring them back to the 100 Chi Gate. However, he found nothing. Yu Shixiang, we have nothing to do with Hua Zhuol. We just met by chance in Lanling City. Then, we accepted his invitation to enter the Death Valley to look for the 6th grade 2-leaf grass to consolidate our cultivation. Seeing that Yu Haoran did not speak for a long time after returning the greeting, He Yu became even more nervous and explained in a trembling voice. My two junior sisters, don't be nervous. I know that you have nothing to do with that guy. Seeing that He Yu and He Ting were afraid of him, Yu Haoran smiled and comforted them. At the same time, he knew that they were no longer in the same world. Continuing to talk would only make them more nervous and afraid. Therefore, he took out some low-priced elixirs and spiritual stones that he did not need from his storage ring and put them in an empty storage bag. Then, he handed it to He Yu and said, My two junior sisters, there is a part of the cultivation resources in this storage bag. Consider it a gift for our reunion. Seeing that He Yu wanted to take it but did not dare to, Yu Haoran sighed softly and stuffed the storage bag in her hand. Then, he turned around and walked toward the long-armed ape. Senior, what do you plan to do next? As more and more martial god realm divine spirit experts awakened and came into being, the situation of the long-armed ape, who had the bloodline of the ancient long-armed ape, whose cultivation was only at the peak of the 7th grade Emperor Wu, became more and more dangerous. Therefore, Yu Haoran wanted to invite the long-armed ape to the Prince Mansion and become a member of the Prince Mansion. In this way, not only could its safety be guaranteed, but it could also increase the overall strength of the Prince Mansion. I don't know. Shaking its head, the long-armed ape raised its head and looked into the depths of the valley. Its eyes revealed a sorrowful expression. Using his divine thought to look in the direction where the long-armed ape was looking, Yu Haoran saw hundreds of gigantic ape corpses. He immediately knew the reason for the long-armed ape's sorrow. Senior, the dead cannot be brought back to life. My condolences. Because he knew the reason for the long-armed ape's sorrow, Yu Haoran had already thought of a way to recruit it. After a simple consolation, Yu Haoran pointed at Hua Zhuol, who was sitting among the rocks, and asked, Chapter 1850. In the inner valley of Death Valley. Of course I do. After withdrawing his sorrowful gaze from the depths of the inner valley, the long-armed ape looked to Hua Zhuol, who was sitting among the rocks. His eyes immediately surged with ruthlessness and fury as he nodded. Then Senior can just follow Junior's arrangements. After a trace of pride flashed in his eyes, Yuharan hurriedly took out a blank jade slip from his storage ring. Then, he recorded Su Wanru and the Green Hill Fox's plot, as well as his following plans into the jade slip. Then, he handed the jade slip to the long-armed ape and instructed, "Senior, please take a look. Little friend, we'll act according to the plan you mentioned in the jade slip." After quickly reading the contents of the jade slip, the long-armed ape's eyes flashed with a frightening, ominous glint. He nodded in agreement with Yuharan's plan. Then, he flashed and appeared beside Huazhuol. He didn't pay any attention to Huazhuol's pleas for mercy, as well as the promises that were impossible to fulfill. He swung his thick palm and directly slapped Huazhuol into a pile of meat paste. Just as the long-armed ape slapped Huazhuol to death, Yuharan cupped his hands and bade farewell to He Yu and He Ting. "Junior sisters, farewell. Yu Shixiang, farewell." He Yu and He Ting hurriedly returned the greeting. "Senior, let's go." As Yuharan rose into the air, he called out to the long-armed ape in the midst of the rocks. "Sister, why did you lie to Yu Shixiang just now?" Just as Yuharan and the long-armed ape left the inner valley of Death Valley, He Ting, whose eyes were originally filled with panic, instantly recovered her calm and asked, "Sister, it's not like you don't know what kind of person Yu Shixiang is. If he knew that we had already joined the Xiandao school and became Huazhuola's personal maidservant, do you think he would still treat us kindly? Will you also give us a large amount of cultivation resources?" Waving the storage pouch in her hand, He Yu said with a hint of pride, "Sis, I'm just worried that if Yu Shixiang finds out that we lied to him in the future, he might turn against us out of anger." He Ting did not feel at ease because of He Yu's boasting. She reminded him worriedly, "After all, Senior Martial Brother Yu is a vengeful person, and we don't have a deep relationship with each other. Sister, don't worry." Compared to He Ting's worry, he was not worried at all. Instead, there was a hint of pride in his eyes as he comforted her. Not only is Yu Shixiang's cultivation and strength powerful, but he also has a high status. He will only pay attention to those top sects, Emperor Wu, and the experts in the godly realm. I'm afraid he won't have any interaction with you and me. Moreover, with the top mental cultivation and martial arts techniques that Huazhuol imparted to us and the large amount of cultivation resources that Yu Shixiang gave us, you and I can totally join the Heart Moon sect that has lost a lot of strength. Then, we can take the opportunity to fight for the position of the Heart Moon sect's leader and use the protection of the 100 Chi Gate to achieve a magnificent change in your lives. After hearing He Ting's plan, He Ting's eyes were filled with disbelief. She did not expect that her sister, who looked weak and delicate, would actually have the ambition of a formidable person. In the center of the eastern region, about 1,600 kilometers away from the capital of the Great Han Empire, China, there was a lake that was shrouded in colorful mist all year round. It was called the Mist Lake. Not only was the scenery of the Mist Lake beautiful, but the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the lake had reached the level of combining with the mist. It could be called a fairyland on earth. Although the fairyland-like Mist Lake was in the territory of the Great Han Empire, it was not under the rule of the Great Han Empire. The reason was that the Mist Lake belonged to the Zhongli clan, which was ranked first among the 5 reclusive clans and had existed since the beginning of the Middle Ages. The autumn water is the same color as the sky. The sunset and the lone wolf fly together. Looking at the fairyland scenery in front of him that was far better than the prince's mansion, Yuharan, who was standing by the Mist Lake, sighed with his hands behind his back. A day ago, after leaving the inner valley of the Death Valley with the long-armed ape, he did not immediately return to the prince's mansion. Instead, he specifically went to the deep pit in the Hengduan Mountains where the ancient demon clan was sealed. However, he unexpectedly found out that the deep pit seal had been broken at least a month earlier than expected. According to the Thaling's divine telekinesis, he finally found the specific reason for the seal's change after re-examining the seal of the demon sealing mystic realm and the ancient god trial field. It was because of the breakthrough of the core divinity realm that could affect the change of the rules, as well as the birth of the Destiny Stone Tablet and the Destiny Spirit Rat. While weakening the power of the Sun-Moon-Star Formation Seal, it also accelerated the time of the Seal's self-destruction. In other words, the Ancient Demon Clan and the Ancient Demon Clan that were supposed to break the seal more than a month later would come to the Tianxian continent at the same time in 6 days. It was precisely because of the prematurely reappearance of the primordial demon race and the primordial celestial demon race, the Green Hill Fox clan's plot to instigate war, and the Jade Void Palace's summons, that Yu Haoran decided to head to the Zhongli clan in advance to help Wu Xingjun propose marriage and fulfill his promise to Zhongli Shuiqin. Next, he would be able to fully deal with the upcoming turmoil in the Tianxian continent. Yu Shixiao, because our Zhongli clan has followed the instructions of our ancestor, we have always pursued a life of seclusion and never participated in any worldly disputes, so the passage to the clan's encampment is closed all year round. Zhongli Shuiqin, who had a slightly shy expression, explained to Yu Haoran, who was admiring the scenery in the lake. Miss Shuiqin, inform your clan members. Fulfilling the promise of marriage as soon as possible would give them more time to deal with the chaos. So Yu Haoran did not probe too much and directly instructed with a calm expression. Yu Shixiao, please wait for a moment. After nodding in response to Yu Haoran's instructions, Zhongli Shuiqin rose into the air and floated on the lake surface. Then, she took out an exquisite jade pendant with a spirit tree carved on the front and channeled her origin energy and soul energy into the jade pendant. As her origin energy and soul energy activated the formation inside the jade pendant, the spirit tree carved on the front of the jade pendant seemed to come alive. As it gradually separated from the jade pendant, it emitted a mysterious aura. Under the influence of the mysterious aura emitted by the spirit tree, the five-colored mist that originally enveloped the lake suddenly churned and gradually condensed into a passage that led directly to the center of the lake. Yu Shixiao, Xiaojun, follow me. Just as the passage to the center of the lake was condensed, Zhongli Shuiqin, who had quickly put away the jade pendant, called out to Yu Haoran and Wu Xingjun, who were standing by the lake. Xingjun, don't worry. I'll take care of everything for you. Yu Haoran comforted Wu Xingjun, whose eyes were filled with worry, as they flew towards the five-colored passage that led to the center of the lake. Chapter 1851. Haze Lake. Following the passage formed by the colorful clouds, Yu Haoran and Wu Xingjun arrived at the center of the lake under the guidance of Zhongli Shuiqin. There was an island half the size of Xianyang City. Yu Haoran, this is the sovereign-level Qiuyun Soul Fall Formation. The pagoda spirit in his mind carefully observed the colorful lights that occasionally flashed around the island, and it reminded him with an astonished expression. Faling, what kind of formation is the Qiuyun Soul Fall Formation? How powerful is the formation? As he didn't know the attitude of the Zhongli clan towards the marriage of Wu Xingjun and Zhongli Shuiqin, Yu Haoran was worried that if a conflict broke out, he had to be prepared to break out. Therefore, he needed to understand the type and power of the formation protecting the island in advance. The Qiuyun Soul Fall Formation is a formation that combines both attack and defense. Not only is the level of the formation at the middle grade Supreme Being level, it can also withstand 3 full blows from a 9th grade Supreme Being. It can also severely injure a Supreme Being who has just entered the Supreme Being level. The Tower Spirit explained with a serious expression. Faling, can you break the Qiuyun Soul Fall Formation? After hearing the power of the Qiuyun Soul Fall Formation, Yu Haoran immediately felt nervous and asked. Yes. Faling replied. How much time do you need? At least half an hour. Half an hour, which was also an hour's time. Hearing that Faling needed an hour to break the Qiuyun Soul Fall Formation, Yu Haoran felt the pressure increase. At the same time, he began to consider whether he should continue to go to the island to propose marriage. But at this moment, 7 people quickly rushed out from the depths of the island. 7 people emitting the aura of Emperor Wu and demigod realm experts. Prince Consort, your presence at the Haze Lake brings light to my Zhongli clan. When they were less than 100 meters away from the edge of the island, the strongest of the 7, an old man in a green robe, laughed and called out, "Yu Xixiang, this is Manager Gu of the Zhongli family. He is highly regarded by my father." Seeing the 7 people who came out of the island to welcome them, as well as the green-robed old man who greeted them warmly, Zhongli Shuiqin hurriedly introduced them with a smile. "Yes." After nodding in response, Yu Haoran's face was as calm as water, but a trace of anger flashed through his eyes from time to time, enough to show that he was extremely unhappy at the moment. Whether it was his status as the prince consort of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom, his cultivation as the Array Emperor of the Formation Dao, and the pill deity of the alchemy Dao, his current status and influence were no less than that of the Zhongli clan's patriarch. Even if the patriarch of the clan did not personally come out of the island to welcome such a distinguished guest, he would at least send a martial god realm elder to do so. An internal manager who was only a demigod, an outsider who did not belong to the Zhongli family. The Zhongli family's actions were not just a show of strength, but a blatant humiliation. If it were not for the fact that he did not want to ruin Wu Zhenjun and Zhongli Shuiqin's marriage, with Yu Haoran's vengeful personality, he would have directly turned and left long ago. "Grandfather Go, how are you feeling?" Zhongli Shuiqin, who did not realize her clan's true intentions, quickly rushed before Manager Gu and the others and asked in concern, "Thank you for your concern, young lady. I've been eating well and sleeping well," Manager Gu said with a smile as he looked at Zhongli Shuiqin kindly. Afterwards, Manager Gu stopped smiling and reminded her in a tone that was half criticism and half doting. "Young lady, you've been away from home for so long. Madam has always been worried about your safety. Now that you've finally returned, why don't you hurry to the back hall and see Madam?" "Grandfather Ge, where are you Shi Xiang and the others?" Although she really wanted to see her mother immediately, when she thought of Yu Haoran and Wu Zhengjun at the edge of the island, as well as the fact that they had taken the initiative to land on the island this time, Zhongli Shuiqin immediately felt somewhat at ease. "Young lady, don't worry," Manager Gu promised with a happy smile as he raised his head to look at Yu Haoran and Wu Zhengjun standing at the edge of the island. "This old servant promises to take good care of the prince consort and his junior brother. I definitely won't neglect young lady's friends and the clan's esteemed guests." Thinking of how Grandfather Gu was highly regarded by her father and the clan elders, it was just right for him to personally receive Yu Haoran and Wu Zhengjun. Therefore, Zhongli Shuiqin immediately waved her hand to remind Yu Haoran and Wu Zhengjun. "Yu Xixiang, Xiao Jun, I'll go see my mother first, and I'll find you later." "Go." Yu Haoran nodded at Zhongli Shuiqin and smiled as he gestured. When Zhongli Shuiqin rushed into the palace in the depths of the island, Yu Haoran and Manager Ji's face darkened at the same time. "Manager Ge, is this how your Zhongli clan treats guests?" Yu Haoran looked straight into Manager Ji's eyes as he questioned with a gloomy face. Just the prince consort of a small empire, for this old man to personally come out of the island to receive you is already giving Yu Haoran a lot of face. "You brat, don't be ungrateful." Manager Gu also looked straight into Yu Haoran's eyes as he unceremoniously humiliated him. "It seems that your Zhongli clan already knew the purpose of my visit this time, and expressed your final attitude through this method." Taking a deep breath, Yu Haoran did his best to suppress the raging anger in his heart as he asked with a frown. "A lowly commoner of a lowly bloodline, after using schemes and tricks to win the heart of my young miss, you want to use this to become a phoenix? Let me tell you, that's wishful thinking." Looking at Wu Zhengjun with a gaze full of contempt, Manager Gu used this method of naked humiliation to express the attitude of the Zhongli clan. If it weren't for the fact that the clan leader and his wife are too kind and unwilling to cause too much killing, this old man would have already sent out the clan's experts to destroy a toad like you who doesn't know the heights of heaven and earth and wants to eat swan meat. Although he had expected the Zhongli clan to oppose the marriage between Wu Jinjun and Zhongli Shuiqin, he hadn't expected them to reject it in such a humiliating way. This made the furious Yu Haoran unable to suppress the intense, killing intent in his heart. He planned to make a scene and let the Zhongli clan know the consequences of humiliating him. However, at this moment, Wu Jingjun, who was standing behind him, tugged on his sleeve and said with a hoarse voice, "Senior brother, I want to return to the prince's mansion right now." Turning his head to glance at Wu Jingjun, Yu Haoran's expression couldn't help but change. This was because not only was Wu Zhongjun's face devoid of blood, but his eyes were also ashen with the color of death. This meant that his heart was gradually dying. Yu Haoran had experienced emotional betrayal in both his previous life and this life, so he knew very well just how serious the damage caused by this kind of betrayal was. He quickly took out a peak-healing pill and forced it into Wu Zhongjun's mouth. Afterwards, he used a secret technique to completely seal the soul in his sea of consciousness, causing his soul and consciousness to temporarily fall into a deep slumber. Chapter 1852. Sunset Lake, in front of the island. Seeing Yu Haoran's undisguised, strong, killing intent, Manager Go, who had quickly taken out his life-bound sword, asked with a nervous expression, What are you trying to do?" After all, with the Zhongli clan's intelligence network, they already knew that Yu Haoran had the ability to kill someone who had just become a martial god. Yu Haoran ignored Steward Ji's question and slowly closed his eyes. Then, he took a deep breath. After opening his eyes again, he directly channeled his soul force into his vocal cords and shouted towards the depths of the island. "Zhongli clan, listen up. If my junior is safe and sound, I can let bygones be bygones for the humiliation you've brought upon us today for Miss Shuiqin's sake. However, if anything happens to my junior, I'll definitely turn the Sunset Lake into a river of blood and make the Zhongli clan completely disappear in the river of history. I, Yu Haoran, am a man of my word." After leaving behind the threat of completely breaking off relations with the Zhongli clan, Yu Haoran directly activated the top-tier escape talisman that Thaling had crafted beforehand and instantly disappeared from the eyes of Steward Ge and the others. What an arrogant and ignorant junior. As the head of the 5 reclusive clans, the Zhongli clan had always obeyed the teachings of their ancestors and never fought for hegemony. However, none of the top sects and clans in the profound Sky Continent, as well as the top powerhouses among the wandering cultivators, dared to provoke the Zhongli clan. The reason was because of the Zhongli clan's deep heritage and foundation, as well as their terrifying strength and methods. Even the 4 divine beasts of the 4 guardian clans didn't dare to openly threaten the Zhongli clan like Yu Haoran did. As a result, seeing Yu Haoran and Wu Jingjun quickly disappear in front of the island, and hearing Yu Haoran's threat that was filled with killing intent, Steward Ge was burning with rage as he waved his sword and cursed. In a majestic palace in the depths of the island, in a beautiful garden, Zhongli Shuiqin was in high spirits talking to a middle-aged, beautiful woman with a graceful and luxurious temperament, who looked like a fairy, about her various experiences when she ran away from home. When she heard that Zhongli Shuiqin was in danger, the middle-aged woman felt very nervous. When she heard that Zhongli Shuiqin had successfully resolved the crisis, the middle-aged woman secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she heard Zhongli Shuiqin vaguely mention Wu Jinjun and Yu Haoran, the middle-aged beauty clenched her jade-like fists in her sleeves, and a trace of worry flashed in her eyes. "Mother, Yu Shixiang gave me a great gift some time ago. It's a heaven-defying treasure that can help me reach the martial god realm. I plan to give it to father." Although Yu Haoran had promised that he would take out a ginseng fruit as a marriage proposal, considering the restrictions of several powerful elders in the family, it was very likely that the ginseng fruit would not fall in her father's hands. Therefore, when she was talking about her experience, Zhongli Shuiqin had already decided to give her ginseng fruit to her father, hoping that he would be happy and agree to her marriage with Wu Jingjun. "Oh, I wonder what heaven-defying treasure my baby daughter is going to give me. Zhongli Qingyang, who had just returned to the back garden, could not help laughing and teasing when he heard that Zhongli Shuaizhen was going to give him a treasure. Father, it's a heaven-defying treasure that can surprise you. Zhongli Shuaiqin, who quickly got up to greet Zhongli Qingyang, took out a special jade box from her storage ring and replied with a smile. Oh, let me see it. Zhongli Qingyang, who knew his daughter's taste, was immediately interested and reached out to take the jade box. It was something that could surprise Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of the 9th grade realm and the head of the 5 reclusive families. However, at this moment, Yu Haoran's threatening voice suddenly sounded above the back garden. People of the Zhongli family, listen up. If my junior brother is safe and sound, then I will definitely turn the Sunset Lake into a river of blood and make the Zhongli family disappear completely in the river of history. Yu Haoran, will do what I say. Bang! After hearing Yu Haoran's murderous threat, Zhongli Qingyang suddenly smashed the stone table in front of him and said with gritted teeth, "Ignorant child, how dare you threaten the Zhongli family, the head of the reclusive families? It seems that the great Emperor Qin kingdom has no need to continue existing. Father, what did you do to Yu Shixiang and Wu Jingjun?" Zhongli Shuaiqin, who suddenly put away the jade box, asked with a trace of panic in her eyes. During the time she lived in the prince's mansion, Zhongli Shuaiqin understood Yu Haoran's character through various aspects. If it weren't for the fact that the clan had gone too far, and if Wu Jingjun hadn't been severely injured, with Yu Haoran's feelings for Wu Jingjun, he would never have turned against the Zhongli clan so decisively, nor would he have cut ties with the Zhongli clan in such a murderous manner. A coward who relies on a woman to get to the top, a bastard who wants to rely on my daughter to get to the top. I will let Manager Gu humiliate them and chase them out of the Sunset Lake. Zhongli Qingyang replied with an indifferent attitude. Father, how can you treat Yu Shixiang and Wu Jingjun like that? Zhongli Shuaiqin asked loudly in disbelief at Zhongli Qingyang's evaluation of Yu Haoran and Wu Jingjun. Not only did Yu Haoran's success have nothing to do with Qin Lingfei, but Yu Haoran had played an unimaginable role in the constant development of the Emperor Qin kingdom. If it weren't for Yu Haoran's deep cultivation in the Tao of pills, which allowed him to refine a large number of peak pills, the Emperor Qin kingdom would not have been able to nurture thousands of martial kings, and martial saints in such a short amount of time. If it weren't for Yu Haoran becoming the double champion of the Southern region and the 5 regions' hidden dragon rankings, the Emperor Qin kingdom would not have been able to obtain the hidden dragon fate and continuously obtain countless peak, peerless, and monstrous geniuses. If it weren't for Yu Haoran wiping out the strange beasts in the Hengduan mountain range alone and resealing the ancient god and demon clans, the Emperor Qin kingdom would not have been able to unite the army and soldiers, nor would it have been able to conquer the central region like it was now. Such a peerless, monstrous genius was actually a coward who relied on a woman to get to the top in her father's eyes. Zhongli Shuaiqin did not know how he came to this conclusion. At the same time, what Zhongli Shuaiqin could not accept was her father's evaluation of Wu Jingjun. If it weren't for her persistent pursuit, the unromantic Wu Jingjun would not have accepted her feelings at all. If it weren't for Yu Haoran's 2 consecutive promises, Wu Jingjun would not have agreed to personally come and propose marriage. If it weren't for your mother begging me to let those 2 brats live, those 2 brats would have died the moment the 5 regions' hidden dragon rankings ended. Zhongli Qingyang reminded her with a trace of contempt in his eyes when faced with the Zhongli clan's loud questioning. Chapter 1853. In the back garden of the Zhongli clan. When she heard that Zhongli Qingyang had already developed killing intent toward Haoran and Wu Jingjun during the battle for the hidden dragon ranking of the 5 regions, Zhongli Shuaiqin felt a chill run down her spine. At the same time, she looked at her father with a confused expression, because she found that the man in front of her, who she once respected and loved very much, had completely changed. Not only had he become a complete stranger, but he had also become arrogant, rude, overbearing, arrogant, and ignorant. Who was Yu Haoran? It could be said that there was no one in the entire Great Xian continent who did not know him. Even the divine beasts of the four great guardian clans, and even the son of destiny, Ji Xing, who was protected by the consciousness of the heavens, did not dare to be so rude to him, let alone humiliate him to his face. Then, who gave her father the courage to humiliate Yu Haoran? Was it the awakening martial god ancestors in the depths of the island, or those elders who only knew how to fight for power? Greetings to the clan leader, madam, and miss. Just as Zhongli Shuiqin was in a confused state, Manager Gu, who had completed the mission of humiliating and driving away Yu Haoran and Wu Jingjun, quickly came to the back garden and respectfully greeted. Manager Gu, quickly tell me what happened. Manager Ji's greeting woke Zhongli Shuiqin up from her confused state. Then, she remembered that Yu Haoran had threatened the Zhongli clan and said that if anything happened to Wu Jingjun, the Zhongli clan would be massacred. She asked with a worried expression, raising his head to look at Zhongli Qingyang, and after receiving a nod from the clan leader, Manager Gu described in detail what had happened after Zhongli Shuiqin left. Of course, he rearranged some of the words used in the process, as well as his attitude and tone when talking to Yu Haoran. Xiao Jun. Unfortunately, when she heard that Wu Jingjun's family flatly refused the marriage proposal and humiliated her, her mind was heavily damaged and she fell into a coma. Zhongli Shuiqin was immediately surrounded by self-blame and sadness. Therefore, she did not hear Steward Ji's slander that inverted right and wrong. If she hadn't taken the initiative to confess, with Wu Zhongjun's wooden personality, he definitely wouldn't have accepted her feelings. If he hadn't taken the initiative to ask for it, Yu Haoran wouldn't have taken the initiative to propose marriage. He wouldn't have been humiliated by his family, and Wu Jingjun wouldn't have been so mentally damaged. Under the influence of self-blame and grief, Zhongli Shuiqin subconsciously wanted to leave the Zhongli clan, wanted to kowtow and apologize to Yu Haoran, wanted to take care of the unconscious Wu Jingjun. Stop. Looking at the absent-minded Zhongli Shuiqin, Zhongli Qingyang was about to leave the back garden when he looked at the absent-minded Zhongli Shuiqin. Where do you think you're going? I'm going to kowtow and apologize to Yu Shixiao. I want to take care of the injured Xiao Jun. The harsh rebuke woke Zhongli Shuiqin from her absent-minded state. The impact of self-blame and grief made her completely ignore her father's rebuke. Zhongli Shuiqin, if you dare to take a step out of the garden, I'll break your legs. In Zhongli Qingyang's eyes, Zhongli Shuiqin's reply was simply unorthodox. This made him threaten her with an ashen face. After glancing coldly at her father, Zhongli Shuiqin ignored Zhongli Qingyang's threat and continued to walk towards the entrance of the garden. Pooh! Pooh! Two powerful yuanli pierced through Zhongli Shuiqin's knees and directly sealed all the acupoints in her legs, causing her to fall to the ground. Qingyang, what are you doing? Seeing that Zhongli Qingyang actually crippled her daughter's legs, the beautiful middle-aged woman, sitting on the wooden chair, suddenly stood up. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and tears as she questioned him. Shut up! Zhongli Qingyang suddenly turned his head and shouted at the beautiful middle-aged woman. Afterwards, he looked with an ashen face at his daughter who did not succumb to his threat and used her arms to crawl towards the entrance of the garden. A fierce, murderous intent flashed in his eyes as he warned her. Zhongli Shuiqin, if you dare to take a step out of the garden, I'll immediately arrange for the few martial god ancestors who have just awakened in the family to immediately destroy Yu Haoran and Wu Jingjun. Hearing her father's change in threat, Zhongli Shuiqin, whose eyes were filled with determination, stopped crawling. She knew that her father was a man of his words. Turning her head to look at her indifferent father and her tear-streaked mother, her determined gaze was gradually replaced by despair. Zhongli Shuiqin finally succumbed to Zhongli Qingyang's warning. However, her original intention of giving the ginseng fruit to Zhongli Qingyang had completely changed. More than 1,000 miles away from Sunset Lake in Chang and City, in a private room of a luxurious inn, Yu Haoran looked at Wu Zhongjun, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. His face was so gloomy that it seemed like it could drip water. This was because when he used his divine sense to examine Wu Zhengjuan's situation, Yu Haoran discovered that not only was his mind severely injured, but his bloodthirsty constitution was also gradually disappearing. Thowling, what should I do? Although his mind was severely injured, he had at least 3 ways to fully recover with the knowledge of the pill god of alchemy and the contents of the Destiny Stone tablet. The only thing he had no way to deal with was the disappearing bloodthirsty constitution. In desperation, he could only ask for help from the knowledgeable Thowling. Yu Haoran, this is the first time I've encountered a situation where the special constitution is disappearing. I don't know how to help Zhengjun right now. Unfortunately, Thowling also had no way to deal with the symptoms of the bloodthirsty constitution disappearing for no reason. Then what should I do? Yu Haoran asked himself anxiously. After all, Wu Zhengjuan's talent and potential weren't very outstanding. The reason why he displayed a cultivation speed that didn't lose to a monstrous genius was because of his hard work in cultivation and his willingness to risk his life. The bloodthirsty constitution was at least half of the credit. If he lost the bloodthirsty constitution's assistance in cultivation speed and the increase in strength, Yu Haoran was not only worried that Wu Zhengjun would become an ordinary warrior, but he was also worried that he wouldn't be able to accept this cruel reality and would do something stupid in the end. Yu Haoran, now that things have reached this point, we can only rely on Zhengjuan's luck. Thowling, who also didn't know what to do, could only sigh and comfort him. The Zhongli family. Yu Haoran gritted his teeth and muttered to himself as he looked in the direction of the sunset lake through the open window of the private room. The ginseng fruit and immortal ascension pill that could assist in breaking through to the martial god realm. The first stage jade heart pill that could be used to increase one's state of mind. The first stage black Bodhi foundation pill that could be used to strengthen one's foundation. The innate spiritual treasure flying smoke sword. The god realm high-grade defensive magic weapon that Thowling had personally refined. And 3 top secret techniques that had reached the god realm. 9 rare treasures that could shake the entire profound sky continent as gifts for a marriage proposal. It was enough to show how much he valued and doted on Wu Zhengjun, and it was enough to show how much he valued the Zhongli family. Chapter 1854. Chang and City, in the private room of an inn. Ever since he reincarnated, he had never suffered such humiliation, nor had he let his family suffer such helpless harm. Thinking of the harm the Zhongli family had brought to him and his brother, Yu Haoran asked, unable to suppress the killing intent in his heart. Thowling, can you set up a sealing formation to seal off the entire Sunset Lake? Although the Zhongli family was powerful, Yu Haoran was confident that he could make them pay a painful price with the help of the Destiny Stone Tablet and the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat. However, the prerequisite was to prevent the Zhongli family from using special methods to ask for help. After all, the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat could only control the fate of opponents below the Half-Tribulation Supreme level. Yes, Thowling, who was familiar with and understood Yu Haoran's vengeful character, had already started to think of ways to take revenge on the Zhongli family when he left the Sunset Lake. Therefore, the moment he heard Yu Haoran's question, he immediately nodded and replied. The Supreme Level 9 Palace 9 Ben's Mystic Formation is a formation that I created by combining the essence of the Peak Divine Level 9 Palace 8 Trigrams Formation, 9 Ben's Yellow River Formation, and Northern Underworld Mystic Formation. It has attack, defense, illusion, space cutting, time stripping, and more than a dozen other methods. Thowling, what about the power of the 9 Palace 9 Ben's Mystic Formation? Yu Haoran asked with a thought. Those below the demigod level will die, without a doubt. Those at the martial god level will die, without a doubt. Those at the half-tribulation supreme level will barely be able to protect themselves, and only supreme beings at the supreme level will be safe and sound, Thowling replied proudly. This. After hearing Thowling's arrogant reply, Yu Haoran couldn't help but gasp. As the head of the 5 hidden families, The Zhongli family's overall strength and foundation were already the most powerful force in the Tianxin continent. They were basically not inferior to the four guardian families. Since the Nine Palace Nine, Ben's mystic formation that Thowling had created could directly destroy the Zhongli family, then it could also destroy any power on the profound sky continent. Why would he need to worry about the Yushu temple that had issued the summons? Why would he need to worry about the ancient demon race and the ancient gods and demons that were about to emerge? However, after spending more than 3 years with each other, he understood Thowling's character very well. He knew that Thowling was not a selfish person. He clearly had a method that could directly decide the outcome of the battle, but he had not taken the initiative to use it. It must be because of the many restrictions of the Nine Palace Nine, Ben's mystic formation. That's right. While nodding to confirm Yu Haoran's conjecture, Thowling further explained the conditions required to set up the Nine Palaces Nine Ben's Black Demon formation. Yu Haoran, if you want to successfully set up the Nine Palace Nine Ben's mystic formation, you have to fulfill 2 very harsh conditions. The first condition is to refine 81 formation flags of the Divine Realm low class. The second condition is that 81 experts who have just entered the Martial God Realm need to use their own divine power and soul power to drive the formation flags at the same time. Only when the 2 conditions are met at the same time can the Nine Palace Nine Ben's mystic formation have the power to easily kill Divine Realm experts. After hearing Thowling's explanation, Yu Haoran immediately asked in dissatisfaction, "Thowling, do you think we can set up the Nine Palace Nine Ben's mystic formation in our current situation?" Even if Thowling could refine 81 formation flags of the Divine Realm low class in a short time with the help of Victor's ability to accelerate time, where could he go to collect the large number of materials needed to refine the formation flags? Moreover, other than Qing Feng, who had rebuilt his body with the help of the first-grade, first-tier soul accumulation pill and the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat that he had just subdued, who was at the peak of the 9th-grade Martial God Realm, there was not a single Martial God Realm expert in the entire Prince's Son-in-Law's mansion. How could he gather 81 people who had just entered the Martial God Realm in such a short time? Yu Haoran, don't worry. Listen to me carefully. Thowling could hear the dissatisfaction in Yu Haoran's tone, so he quickly explained. Our purpose in sealing off the Sunset Lake is only to ruthlessly teach the Zhongli clan a lesson. It's not like we're going to uproot them like we did to the Long clan. So, there's no need to set up a complete Nine Palace Nine Ben's mystic fiendish formation. That's right. Yu Haoran nodded in agreement. Then, 81 experts of the Martial Saint Realm can control 81 formation flags of the Emperor Realm to set up a simplified version of the Nine Palace Nine Ben's mystic formation and completely seal off the Sunset Lake. Really? Yu Haoran asked in surprise. In the beginning, the purpose of asking about the formation sealing off the Sunset Lake was to prevent the Zhongli clan from using a special secret method to ask for help. They never thought of using the formation to teach the Zhongli clan a lesson. Of course, as he nodded in confirmation, Thowling directly took out the 81 formation flags of the Emperor Realm that he had successfully refined 2 months ago from the victor and then ordered. So, now you only need to mobilize 81 experts of the Martial Saint Realm from Feng Run City. Looking at the 81 formation flags of the Emperor Realm floating in front of him, Yu Haoran thought for a while. Then he took out a communication jade talisman to contact Lan Rong from the storage ring and asked how many experts of the Martial Saint Realm were among the 100,000 elite soldiers stationed in Feng Run City. He was very satisfied with Lan Rong's reply. Because of the large number of elixirs that he had reserved in advance and the formation that could extract the essence of the corpses of martial saints and Emperor Wu, there were more than 100 experts of the Martial Saint Realm among the 100,000 elite soldiers of the Northern Army. At the same time, generals like Lan Rong and Han Guangbei had also successfully reached the Martial Saint Realm. Since Feng Run City was not very far from Sunset Lake, with the strength of the Martial Saint Realm, it would only take 3 to 4 hours to get there. At the same time, considering the deep foundation of the Zhongli family, he was worried that he might not be able to handle it alone. Therefore, he asked Lan Rong to inform Qing Feng Yusiki, Lu Yuan, Palace, and Long-Armed Ape to lead 81 experts of the Martial Saint realm to meet up with him. After putting away the communication jade talisman, Yu Haoran looked at Wu Jingjun, who was lying on the bed, and thought of the principle that whoever tied the bell should untie it. He ordered Thaling. Thaling put Jingjun the victor for the time being, so that after the Zhongli family's trouble is solved, Zhongli Shuiqin can treat his heart disease as soon as possible. Okay. After nodding in response, Thaling waved his hand and put Wu Jingjun into the victor. Then, Yu Haoran quietly left Chong and City and used the method of tearing the void to return to a mountain 10 miles away from Sunset Peak. If he wanted to use the fate-stealing spiritual mouse to control fate to weaken the Zhongli family's strength, he needed to know the strength of the Zhongli family in advance and confirm the number and names of Emperor Wu, demigods, and martial gods. Chapter 1855. Sunset Lake. No one knew if it was because of bad luck, but after guarding the Sunset Lake for almost 3 hours, not to mention the core disciples of the Zhongli clan, even the lowly servants and odd-job workers didn't leave or return to the Sunset Lake. This made Yu Haoran, who was hiding by the lake using the secret technique of invisibility, so frustrated that he almost vomited blood. Thaling, can you break through the 5-colored smoke in front of us? It was less than half an hour before Qing Feng led everyone to the Sunset Lake. If they wanted to thoroughly understand the Zhongli family's strength and foundation before setting up the simplified version of a 9-palace, 9-turn mystic formation, it was definitely not a good idea to continue waiting. Therefore, Yu Haoran planned to sneak into the island in the lake quietly and take the risk to ambush and capture the direct descendants of the Zhongli family on the island. No problem. Just as Zhongli and Shui Qin led Yu Haoran and Wu Jingjun into the island in the lake, Thaling had not only thoroughly studied the structure of the 5-colored smoke, but he had also prepared a way to break through it beforehand. Therefore, while nodding to Yu Haoran, Thaling immediately used the method he had prepared beforehand and directly tore through the 5-colored smoke by the lake. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran left his second clone by the lake as a backup method and stepped directly into the 5-colored smoke tear that Thaling had created. After stepping through the tear in the 5-colored smoke, Yu Haoran realized that he had directly arrived at the edge of the island in the lake. He quickly scanned the surrounding environment and quickly hid in a pile of rocks at the edge of the island. Then, using the telepathy method, he successfully sensed his second clone by the lake. Yu Haoran secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then he stood guard in the pile of rocks and silently waited for someone to appear at the edge of the island. However, in the end, he waited for close to 20 minutes and did not see anyone. This forced Yu Haoran to think of a way to continue taking the risk. Thaling, is the autumn cloud soul fall formation activated? No. Thaling, who had used his divine sense to check the situation at the edge of the island, explained while replying. Yu Haoran, as an honorable grade Qiyun Soul Luo formation, a level 2 upper spiritual vein can only be maintained for 3 days at most. Not to mention the Tianxian continent, where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is scarce. Even during the Middle Ages, where spiritual energy turned into rain, there was no power that could maintain the Qiyun Soul Luo formation in its state of continuous activation. After nodding to indicate that he understood, Yu Haoran used the power of laws of the 2 elements. Then, he combined it with the Destiny Stone Tablet's memory inheritance to turn into a bolt of lightning and charged into the depths of the island. Brother Ming, I heard that Ancestor Zhongsheng, who has just awakened, plans to personally guide the cultivation of 9 outstanding direct descendants in the clan. I wonder if you and I will have the luck to be chosen by Ancestor Zhongsheng. When Yu Haoran was less than 1,000 meters away from the palace in the depths of the island, 2 handsome young men with extraordinary temperaments walked out of the island while chatting with each other. That's right. Ancestor Zhongsheng is a divine spirit expert at the peak of level 7 martial god. If we can get his guidance, you and I will be able to successfully advance to Emperor Wu's realm very quickly. Among the 2 young men, The young man in blue had a yearning look in his eyes as he sighed. They were not even 20 years old, but they had the cultivation of a peak level 9 martial venerable. It was enough to prove that the two young men with extraordinary temperaments were not only direct descendants of the Zhongli clan, but also elite disciples with monstrous talent. Generally, elite disciples like them could not only participate in some of the clan's important affairs, but they could also understand the clan's core secrets, including the composition of the entire clan's members. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who had quickly stopped his forward momentum, directly used his powerful cultivation to knock out the two young men. Then, he used the method of merging his original body and doppelganger to instantly disappear from the island. The moment Yu Haoran disappeared, a terrifying divine thought that contained the might of heaven quickly shrouded the place where he had just disappeared. Then, a puzzled voice came from midair. I clearly sensed the aura of someone who did not belong to the Zhongli clan. Why did it suddenly disappear? Could it be that because I just woke up, my mind and divine soul have not perfectly merged yet, causing a slight deviation in my senses? After directly smashing the heads of the two young men from the Zhongli clan, Yu Haoran could not help but exclaim, "What powerful strength! What a deep foundation!" The truth was just as he had guessed before capturing them alive. The two young men, named Zhongli Yuming and Zhongli Yuhai, were not only the elite disciples of the Zhongli clan's direct descendants, but also the great elder who controlled the real power of the clan. In the end, they were regarded and doted on by the great elder. After searching through the memories of Zhongli Yuming and Zhongli Yuhai, Yu Haoran not only knew that the number of divine spirit experts in the Zhongli clan who were asleep and had awakened reached 40, but they also had 7 offensive and 6 defensive natural spiritual treasures. At the same time, the number of Emperor Wu and demigod experts exceeded thousands. No wonder the Zhongli clan was so arrogant and rude. They originally had the confidence to be arrogant and rude. Fortunately, things were just as he had guessed at the beginning. Zhongli Yuming's memories contained the information of nearly 90% of the Zhongli clan's direct descendants and collateral descendants, as well as the information of the rogue cultivators secretly recruited. Since he had obtained the information he wanted, Yu Haoran did not waste any more time. He directly woke up the destiny-stealing spiritual rat that was immersed in cultivation, then used his divine thought to transmit the names of all the Emperor Wu, demigod, and martial god experts in the Zhongli clan to it, so that it could use the Destiny Stone Tablet to control their fates. After that, he returned to the mountain peak that was 10 miles away from the Sunset Lake. As he adjusted his state, he waited for Qing Feng and the others to arrive. 7 minutes later, Qing Feng, Yusiki, Lu Yuan, Palace, and Long-Armed Ape led 81 martial sages to the mountain peak where he was adjusting his state. After quickly ending his cultivation, Yu Haoran hurriedly called out to Qing Feng, whose aura was as deep as the sea. "Senior brother Qing Feng." "Junior brother Yu." After cupping his hands in return, Qing Feng looked at the Sunset Lake that was 10 miles away. His clear eyes gradually became serious. "Sister, senior brother Lu, brother Qi, senior, you're here." Ignoring Qing Feng, whose expression was gradually becoming serious, Yu Haoran greeted Yusiki and the others briefly, then walked directly to the 81 martial sages who were used to set up the 9-palace, 9-turn mystic formation. Glancing at the 81 martial sages in front of him, Yu Haoran ordered with a serious expression, "Next, you just need to listen carefully. You don't need any response." After hearing Yu Haoran's order, the 80 elite soldiers who belonged to the Northern Army instinctively knelt down and accepted the order loudly. However, under Yu Haoran's stern warning gaze, they finally knelt down on one knee without any sound. Chapter 1856. On a mountain peak 10 miles away from the Sunset Lake. When Yu Haoran finished assigning the 9-palace 9 bends mystic formation to his subordinates and returned to Qing Feng's side, Qing Feng pointed at the Sunset Lake 10 miles away and asked with a serious expression, "Junior brother Yu, do you know what that place is?" "The Sunset Lake." "Junior brother Yu, do you know which force the Sunset Lake belongs to? Ching Feng continued to ask. The Zhongli clan, the leader of the 5 great reclusive clans in the profound sky continent. Junior brother Yu, do you know the exact origins of the Zhongli clan? Ching Feng frowned slightly as he continued to ask. The bloodline of the eternal green sovereign from the Middle Ages. Ching Feng turned to look at the relaxed Yu Haoran as a trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. Junior brother Yu, since you know the origins of the Zhongli clan, you should also know how powerful the clan is as a whole and how deep their accumulation is. Why do you still want to provoke them? Senior brother Ching Feng, although the Zhongli clan is very powerful and their accumulation is bottomless, as long as they haven't broken free from the shackles of fate and the control of the heavenly cycle, then I have sufficient confidence to defeat them, or even completely destroy them. Although Ji Xing was a fake child of fate, with the confirmation of the heavens consciousness and the vigorous promotion of the Yushu Temple, nearly 99% of the people in the profound sky continent believe that the master of the Yushu Temple's heavenly palace, Ji Xing, was the child of fate that could start and end the immeasurable calamity. He was the savior that could help them pass through the heavenly calamity. This led to the influence of the people's hearts, and the providence of the heavens and earth undeniably tilted towards the Yushu Temple. With the help of the Destiny Stone Tablet and the Destiny Calamity Spirit Rat. Although Yu Haoran didn't care about the loss of providence, his close friends and family would be affected. Not only would they encounter more danger when they went out for training, but it might also change some of their thoughts. Therefore, Yu Haoran planned to use the opportunity of teaching the Zhongli clan a lesson to gradually reveal some of his methods regarding fate. In this way, not only would he be able to seize the heaven's providence that favored the Yushu Temple, but he would also be able to stabilize the morale of the army. Ching Feng frowned and looked at Yu Haoran. He couldn't figure out why Yu Haoran was so confident that he could defeat and destroy the Zhongli clan, which even Zhun Yuanzi feared. Not continuing his conversation with Ching Feng, Yu Haoran turned his head and indicated to Yu Siki and the others to wait where they were for the time being. He led the 81 martial saint experts who were already familiar with the simplified version of the 9 Palace 9 Ben's profound, fiendish formation and flew towards the sunset lake 10 kilometers away. After that, the main body and clone quickly completed the exchange of souls. After that, the second clone took control of the body and cooperated with the pagoda spirit to guide the 81 martial saint realm experts to start setting up the 9 Palace 9 Ben's mystic formation around the entire sunset lake. Perhaps it was because the Zhongli family was extremely confident and believed that no powerhouse or elite warrior in the profound skyland would dare to provoke them. As a result, not only were there no surveillance or defensive formations around the sunset lake, there weren't any experts paying attention to what was happening outside the island either. This allowed the second clone and the 81 martial saints to successfully set up the 9 Palace 9 Ben's mystic formation. Formation rise. After regaining control of his body, Yu Haoran quickly formed hand seals with his fingers. Then, he used the formation control method that Thowing had taught him and successfully activated the 9 Palace 9 Ben's mystic formation. With the activation of the 9 Palace 9 Ben's mystic formation, a layer of invisible energy quickly enveloped the entire sunset lake. Ching Feng's face could not help but change as he constantly paid attention to the lake. This was because he discovered that as Yu Haoran activated the formation he had just set up, the entire sunset lake seemed to have vanished into thin air. Not only was there a vast expanse of whiteness, but even the senses of a peak 9th level martial god were unable to find or lock onto the location of the sunset lake. After successfully activating the 9 Palace 9 Ben's mystic formation, Yu Haoran took a deep breath and then waved at Ching Feng and the others who were on the 10-mile mountain. When Ching Feng and the others came to his side, Yu Haoran reached out and swiped at the invisible energy shield in front of him. Then, a crack that was about 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide appeared before everyone's eyes. Behind the crack was the water of the sunset lake and the colorful mist. "Let's go." Without further explanation, Yu Haoran called out to Ching Feng and the others and then took the lead to step into the crack. In the back garden of the Zhongli clan, just as Zhongli Shuiqin chose to give in to her father's threats and warnings and did not continue to stubbornly leave the back garden, Zhongli Qingyang, whose expression gradually eased, waved his hand and unsealed the acupoints on her legs. Then, the beautiful middle-aged woman appeared beside Zhongli Shuiqin in a flash. After forcibly feeding her a top healing divine pill, she reached out to help her stand up again. In response, Zhongli Shuiqin, whose eyes were filled with dead silence, was manipulated by the beautiful middle-aged woman like a puppet. Looking at his daughter who was in a daze, a trace of pity flashed in Zhongli Qingyang's eyes. However, when he thought of the complicated and ever-changing situation in the Tianxian continent, his pity was quickly replaced by determination. He said coldly, "Qin, the reason why I rejected Yu Haoran's marriage proposal, other than the fact that the boy with the surname Wu is indeed not worthy of you, is also because the clan has chosen a new suitable marriage for you." Hearing that Zhongli Qingyang had decided on his own to arrange a new marriage for her, Zhongli Shuiqin's dazed expression gradually became lively. She turned her head to look at the east of the island. After turning her head back, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and she asked with a hoarse voice that was filled with a trace of mockery, "I wonder who father sold your daughter to?" Zhongli Shuiqin, shut up, sold his daughter. After hearing Zhongli Shuiqin's mockery, Zhongli Qingyang, who was embarrassed into anger, immediately rebuked her. In response, Zhongli Shuiqin laughed bitterly without the slightest fear. Her eyes were still filled with contempt as she asked, "Back then, in order to obtain a trace of fire elemental energy, you ignored your daughter's strong opposition and forcefully betrothed me to the short-lived ghost of the Vermilion Bird clan. Now, not only have you forcefully separated your daughter from Xiaojuan's happiness, you have also betrothed me to someone else without my knowledge. Isn't this the same as selling your daughter?" Faced with Zhongli Shuiqin's mockery, Zhongli Qingyang was so angry that he did not know what to do. "Qin, we are your biological parents. Everything we do is for your happiness. How can you say that about your father?" The beautiful middle-aged woman, who was also dissatisfied with Zhongli Shuiqin's mockery, criticized her with a slightly angry expression. "For my happiness, haha." After hearing her mother's criticism, Zhongli Shuiqin laughed miserably. Then, she raised her head and looked straight at Zhongli Qingyang as she asked, Chapter 1857. In the back garden of the Zhongli family, selling his daughter. Hearing Zhongli Shuiqin ridicule him for selling his daughter again, the ashen-faced Zhongli Qingyang almost went berserk. But under the gaze of the middle-aged woman and steward Gu, Zhongli Qingyang finally took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the raging anger in his heart before replying coldly. The master of the Yushu Temple's heavenly palace, the controller of fate, Ji Xing. Hearing that her father had betrothed her to the Yushu Temple's heavenly sovereign Ji Xing, Zhongli Shuiqin unexpectedly raised her head to the sky and laughed loudly. She didn't stop even when Zhongli Qingyang and the middle-aged woman frowned. Enough! Hearing the mockery in Zhongli Shuiqin's laughter, Zhongli Qingyang couldn't help but shout, "Lord Father, not only are you and Ji Xing influential figures of the same generation, but you're also friends who call each other brothers." Although she stopped laughing, Zhongli Shuiqin still had a smile on her face as she mocked. "If your daughter marries Ji Xing, then should he call you Lord Father-in-law, or should I call you Elder Brother according to his status?" Just as Zhongli Shuiqin's mocking voice fell, a crisp and clear slap sounded in the back garden. Following the crisp and clear slap, Zhongli Shuiqin soared into the air and flew towards the garden wall. Boom! Zhongli Shuiqin directly smashed through the garden wall and was drowned by countless broken walls and debris. Seeing Zhongli Shuiqin being drowned by broken walls and debris, the middle-aged woman wanted to immediately go forward and save her, but after seeing Zhongli Qingyang's murderous threat, she could only stand there anxiously. Zhongli Qingyang's furious attack, just now, was very heavy. But for Zhongli Shuiqin, who was already at the peak of the third rank of Emperor Wu, other than a slight swelling on her cheeks, she didn't suffer too much damage. However, her father's actions made her feel as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Using Yuan Li to blow away the broken walls and debris that drowned her before returning to Zhongli Qingyang, Zhongli Shuiqin's eyes were filled with unwillingness. Father, what if I don't agree to marry Ji Xing? The marriage with the Destiny's child, Ji Xing, is the result of the joint discussion of all the elders and ancestors of the clan. You are not allowed to oppose it, and at the same time, you do not have the qualifications to oppose it. Zhongli Qingyang, who was barely suppressing the raging flames in his body, warned with a cold and indifferent expression. Father, your daughter is a woman, a living woman, a woman with her own dignity. Are you not afraid that you will marry a corpse? Zhongli Shuiqin also had a cold expression as she threatened with a frosty voice. We have already reached an agreement with the Yushu Temple to form a life and death alliance. The decision to betroth you to the Destiny's child, Ji Xing, is just icing on the cake. The corners of Zhongli Qingyang's mouth could not help but curl up slightly in the face of Zhongli Shuiqin's threat. Therefore, even if the one who marries over is a corpse, it will not affect the agreement of the life and death alliance, nor will it affect the relationship between the Zhongli family and the Yushu Temple. Zhongli Qingyang's cruel threat made Zhongli Shuiqin's face instantly turn as pale as paper. Her body could not help but tremble, because she knew that her father was a man of his words. Since he had already decided to marry her to the Destiny's child, Ji Xing, then no matter how bitterly she begged, or how sarcastic and ridiculing she threatened, it was impossible to change his decision. At the same time, the decision and performance of her parents today made Zhongli Shuiqin truly see through family love and understand what was called heartless. The emotional impact of disappointment to the extreme made Zhongli Shuiqin, who had been obedient since childhood, gradually have rebellious thoughts. To be more precise, it was the decision to betray the Zhongli family and then wander the world with Wu Zhengjun. Therefore, the silent Zhongli Shuiqin silently lowered her head and began to think of a plan to escape from the family. In the eyes of Zhongli Qingyang and the middle-aged, beautiful woman, Zhongli Shuiqin's action of lowering her head in silence was a helpless preparation to give in. After all, when she was forced to marry the short-lived ghost of the vermilion bird family, Zhongli Shuiqin had also chosen to give in and marry after strong opposition. Therefore, Zhongli Qingyang did not continue to force Zhongli Shuiqin and gave her enough time to consider. Time passed minute by minute. Zhongli Shuiqin, who had lowered her head to think of a way to escape from the family, gradually became anxious. It was because she discovered that the various secret methods she grasped could not be successfully used under the supervision of Emperor Wu's father, who was at the peak of the 9th rank. As a result, she was unable to smoothly escape the island in Sunset Lake. In the end, she could only choose to feign civility for the time being. Once she avoided her father and the family's experts, she would use the secret methods passed down by her ancestors to escape the family. Zhongli Shuiqin, who had made her decision, nodded and planned to agree to marry the Destiny's child, Ji Xing, when Yu Haoran's voice suddenly sounded from above the island. Bastards of the Zhongli family, get the hell out here for this prince consort. After leading Qing Feng and the others through the crack and into Sunset Lake, they continued through the cracks in the multicolored mist created by the Thowling Formation and arrived in front of the island in the lake. Looking at the endless palaces in the depths of the island, Yu Haoran took a deep breath and directly channeled soul force into his vocal cords before loudly cursing toward the palaces in the depths of the island. Bastards of the Zhongli family, get the hell out here for this prince consort. His thunderous curses quickly spread throughout the entire island and instantly alarmed countless experts who were cultivating in seclusion on the island. In less than 10 seconds, more than 100 martial sages and martial venerables rushed out of the palaces and charged toward them with murderous intent. Senior, don't leave a single one alive. Seeing that the one with the highest cultivation among the 100 or so opponents charging over was only a peak 9th rank martial saint, Yu Haoran, who was too lazy to make a move, turned his head and looked at the people behind him. His gaze finally stopped on the long-armed ape. Because Emperor Wu's peak 7th rank long-armed ape had the lowest cultivation and strength among the 5 of them, they could only leave the shrimp soldiers and crab generals in front of them to him to deal with. After hearing Yu Haoran's order, the long-armed ape's eyes flashed with a trace of depression. It roared towards the sky and directly faced the opponents that were charging at it. Then it swung its wide and thick palm, and in a few moves, smashed over 100 opponents into meat patties and meat paste. Evil creature, you dare to kill my Zhongli family's people. I think you're tired of living. Just as the long-armed ape ruthlessly and easily smashed the last opponent to death, an angry rebuke came from the Western Palace. Chapter 1858. Sunset Lake on the island. The expert in the palace on the west side of the island had the strength of a peak first tribulation demigod. The power of the giant palm, which was condensed with all his primary energy and soul power, was comparable to that of Emperor Wu's peak 9th stage cultivation. Yu Haoran was worried that the long-armed ape, which was only at the peak of Emperor Wu's 7th stage cultivation, might not be a match for the giant palm. Therefore, when he wanted to ask Pallas to help, he was rejected by the long-armed ape. Young friend, there's no need to interfere. Watch how I, the old ape, destroy this giant palm. Senior, be careful. Although he agreed to the long-armed ape's request, the cautious Yu Haoran still secretly made preparations to be able to help in case of an accident. Looking at the rapidly approaching giant palm, the long-armed ape clenched its fists and began to hit its chest. Every time it hit its chest, its body would expand by 1 meter. Soon, the long-armed ape, which was only slightly more than 2 meters tall, became a giant ape that was more than a few thousand meters tall. Roar! The gigantic ape, which was thousands of meters tall, roared at the sky, and then charged directly at the giant palm that was slapping down. Yu Haoran, this is the star-shaking technique evolved from the 4 innate abilities of the ancient long-armed ape. Just as the gigantic ape was about to reach the gigantic palm, the pagoda spirit in the sea of consciousness excitedly reminded him, taking the sun and moon, shrinking mountains, distinguishing right and wrong, and manipulating heaven and earth. These were the 4 innate abilities of the ancient long-armed ape. The star-shaking technique was a powerful martial skill derived from the sun and moon innate ability. Therefore, after hearing Thaling's reminder, Yu Haoran quickly focused on observing the changes in the giant ape's body and the way it used its strength when charging at the giant palm. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening roar, the giant palm, which was as powerful as Emperor Wu's peak 9th stage cultivation, was directly shattered by the giant ape. Then, the giant ape, which had not exhausted much of its strength, suddenly punched the West Palace with its right fist toward the peak first tribulation demigod who had just formed the giant palm. Bastard, you're courting death. Accompanied by a furious roar, a white-haired old man wearing a sky-blue robe quickly rushed out from the Western Palace, after which he also clenched his right fist and faced the giant ape. Boom! As the giant ape's giant fist collided with the sky-blue robed elder's fist, a second deafening roar immediately resounded above the island. Accompanied by a deafening boom, the sky-blue robed elder took 9 steps back. Although the sky-blue robed elder did not take a single step back, his face revealed an expression of disbelief. Bang! After only 3 seconds, the old man's body suddenly exploded, and his soul was completely destroyed. In the back garden of the Zhongli family, after hearing Yu Haoran's insults, Zhongli Shuiqin, who had originally planned on feigning civility and temporarily agreeing to marry her father to Ji Yuan, quickly shut her mouth and looked towards the east of the island. Her eyes were filled with anticipation and worry. Anticipation because she knew that the cautious Yu Haoran would definitely not take the risk to return to the island before he was absolutely certain that he could deal with the Zhongli family. He was worried because Yu Haoran had mentioned it before he left the island. If Wu Jingjun was safe and sound, then he would not be calculative about the humiliation that the family had brought to them on account of Zhongli Shuiqin. However, if anything happened to Wu Jingjun, then he would return to the Zhongli family to take revenge. Now, not only had Yu Haoran returned to the Zhongli family, but he had also appeared on the island openly. This meant that he had the means to deal with the Zhongli family. At the same time, Wu Zhengjun had also met with an accident. Ignorant brat, how dare you disregard the Zhongli family? Then, I, Zhongli Qingyang, will make sure you don't return today. Zhongli Qingyang, who was also paying attention to the east of the island, muttered to himself with murderous intent. However, Zhongli Qingyang's face gradually darkened when he saw the long-armed ape easily kill over 100 martial saints and martial exalts from the family. When he saw the long-armed ape, who had transformed into a 1,000-meter-tall giant ape, easily kill a demigod home master of his family, Zhongli Qingyang, whose expression was already as gloomy as water, directly soared into the air and charged towards the edge of the island. Qin, don't provoke your father's anger. Just as Zhongli Qingyang charged toward the edge of the island, Zhongli Shuiqin, who saw an opportunity to escape from the family, also wanted to soar into the air to meet up with Yu Haoran. However, she was forcefully pulled back by her mother. Mother, let go. Zhongli Shuiqin coldly ordered as she looked at the middle-aged woman indifferently. Qin, listen to mother's advice. Don't meet with the Yu and Wu people, so as to not ruin your and your family's reputation and provoke the displeasure of your father and ancestors. Tightly grabbing Zhongli Shuiqin's arm, the middle-aged, beautiful woman bitterly advised. Mother, I'm sorry. Zhongli Shuiqin's brows were tightly furrowed, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed through her eyes. She softly apologized and directly channeled her origin energy and soul force in her left arm. She instantly pushed back the beautiful middle-aged woman and soared into the air as she charged to the edge of the island. Yu Haoran couldn't help but praise when he saw the long-armed ape use its physical strength to instantly form a vibration force that directly shattered the body and soul of the blue-robed elder. Amazing, truly amazing. As expected of a martial technique evolved from an innate ability. The red-loathing beast, who was also good at physical strength, looked at the giant ape with a gleam in its eyes, eager to give it a try. Bastard, you actually dared to kill the home master of my Zhongli family. This elder will definitely skin you, pull out your tendons, gnaw on your bones, and drink your blood. Just as Yu Haoran's praise fell, a furious roar sounded from the West Palace. Accompanied by a furious shout, an old man with a cultivation base of peak third tribulation demigod, wearing a white robe embroidered with purple gold lace and holding a low-grade divine realm sword, charged toward long-armed ape at lightning speed. Brother Qi, attack! From the exchange of blows with the blue-robed elder just now, Yu Haoran knew that the long-armed ape was able to use the martial technique evolved from his bloodline talent by drawing on a portion of his yuan and soul power. Then, facing a peak third tribulation demigod in a white robe who wielded a divine realm sword, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from the other party. Therefore, without the slightest hesitation, he immediately turned his head and instructed Palace. Inch/. After hearing Yu Haoran's instruction, Palace, who was rushing towards the white-robed elder, immediately drew out the immortal slaughtering sword and used a divine realm sword technique that came for his bloodline inheritance. The immortal slaughtering sword combined with the divine realm sword technique formed a sharp sword aura that disappeared the moment it left the tip of the sword. Then, the sharp sword aura that disappeared into thin air instantly appeared in front of the white-robed elder. Chapter 1859. Sunset Lake on the Island. Child's Play. Seeing the inch sword formed by the sword Qi, the white-robed old man sneered with disdain. He quickly waved the divine sword in his hand, intending to shatter the inch sword. But just as the divine sword was about to touch the inch sword suddenly accelerated. It easily avoided the collision of the divine sword and directly pierced the white-haired old man's forehead. Damn it! Whether it was the sudden acceleration or the sudden increase in power, the white-robed old man, who felt the threat of death from the inch sword, quickly retreated. He hurriedly mobilized his origin energy and soul power, as well as the defense formed by the profound mysteries of the laws to block the inch sword that had already pierced his forehead. Facing the fatal inch sword, the white-robed old man's performance was perfect, whether it was the ability to react or the defense he made. But he forgot a very important thing, which was Pallas, who had already rushed to his side. Seeing the white-robed old man using the profound mysteries of the laws, origin energy, and soul power to form a defense that not only successfully blocked the damage of the inch sword, but also gradually weakened the power of the inch sword, Pallas's eyes flashed with a cold light. Coupled with his powerful physical strength, the immortal slaughtering sword directly pierced the white-robed old man's heart. Just blocking the inch sword already took up 90% of the white-robed old man's energy and strength. At this moment, he simply did not have the ability to block the immortal slaughtering sword that was piercing his heart. As the threat of death approached, the white-robed old man cried for help with a frightened expression. "Ancestor, save me." Oof. After hearing the white-robed old man's cry for help, a cold snort filled with strong killing intent immediately came from the West Palace. Accompanied by the cold snort, a finger beam that contained fierce killing intent shot directly at the immortal slaughtering sword with lightning speed. Universe in the sleeve. Seeing the finger beam that shot at lightning speed, Pallas did not panic at all and wave his left sleeve. He had already grasped part of the essence of a universe in the sleeve secret technique and directly absorbed the finger beam into his sleeve. At the same time, the immortal slaughtering sword suddenly accelerated and pierced the white-robed old man's heart. The injury caused by the piercing of the heart and the intense pain caused the white-robed old man to let out a miserable howl. At the same time, his attention also relaxed to a certain extent. The inch sword pierced into the sea of consciousness of his eyebrows and then heavily slashed at the body of his soul. Bang! His heart and divine soul suffered heavy injuries at the same time, causing the cultivation and strength of the white-robed old man to drop continuously. He was unable to continue to form an effective defense. In the end, when the Scarlet Loathe used the immortal slaying sword to smash his body, it also directly strangled the divine soul in his sea of consciousness. "Bastard, you're courting death." Just as the Scarlet Loathe was about to kill the white-robed old man, a clear and melodious voice rang out. Accompanied by a crisp and pleasant voice, a white figure that was faster than lightning instantly appeared in front of Pallas. Immediately afterward, a slender, white, and tender hand seemed to have traversed the barrier of time and space. It seemed to be gently patting his chest, but in reality, it contained a fatal and terrifying power. Boom! Just as the slender and fair hand was less than a centimeter away from Pallas's heart, the tip of a sword that emitted a sharp sword aura pierced through the barrier of time and space and heavily pierced the palm. Accompanied by an intense explosion, Pallas was forced back 3 steps by the shockwave created by the clash between the sword tip and the jade palm. "Who are you?" Looking at the palm that was pierced by the sword tip and the dripping golden blood, Zhongli Xuanna, who was wearing a white corset dress and had a beautiful appearance, raised her head to look at the handsome young man in a dark blue robe and asked with a slight frown. Yu Haoran, who was holding the immortal trapping sword tightly, signaled Pallas and the long-armed ape to return to Qing Feng's side and looked straight at Zhongli Xuanna as he replied. "Emperor Wu's cultivation base is at the peak of the 9th level, but you have the strength of a beginner martial god. Your talent and potential are not inferior to the Child of Destiny." After a flash of white light, the wound on the jade palm was completely healed. Zhongli Xuanna looked at Yu Haoran with admiration in her eyes and praised him. "You flatter me." After cupping his hands politely, Yu Haoran ignored the beautiful Zhongli Xuanna and looked directly at the palace at the center of the island. He looked at a middle-aged man in a brocade robe who had a dignified temperament and looked somewhat similar to Zhongli Shuiqin. "Greetings, Ancestor Xuanna." The middle-aged man who rushed to the top of the island first greeted Zhongli Xuanna respectfully. "You're too polite, Patriarch." After a simple return of greeting, Zhongli Xuanna took a few steps back and left space for Zhongli Qingyang and Yu Haoran to talk. "Yu Haoran, do you know the origin of the Zhongli family?" Zhongli Qingyang, who had his hands behind his back, asked with a slightly arrogant expression after suppressing the strong killing intent that was constantly surging in his heart. "Is there a difference between knowing and not knowing?" Yu Haoran asked with a cold smile. "Of course there is a difference." After a gloomy, cold light flashed in his eyes, Zhongli Qingyang threatened with an arrogant attitude. "If you don't know, then I have the obligation to explain the glorious history of the Zhongli family to you. If you know, then you should know that offending the Zhongli family will bring disaster to you, your family and friends, and the great Emperor Qin kingdom behind you." "Huh." In the face of Zhongli Qingyang's threat, Yu Haoran chuckled sarcastically and quickly returned to everyone's side. He then looked at Yusiki and Lu Yuan and asked, "Sister, senior brother Lu, which one of you is going to attack next?" "Leave it to me." After taking a step forward, Lu Yuan indicated with a faint smile on his face. "Okay." With the help of the mysterious yellow gas in the prince's mansion, Lu Yuan, who had successfully advanced to the peak of Emperor Wu 9th grade, had strength that was infinitely close to the martial god realm. At the same time, the dark sword physique and the Xianyuan sword could increase his strength. Even if he faced a martial god realm expert, he could protect himself. Therefore, in the face of Lu Yuan's choice, Yu Haoran nodded and agreed without much hesitation. Yusiki, who did not choose Zhongli Qingyang, pointed at Zhongli Xuanna and took the initiative to challenge her. "Leave her to me." Okay. After Yusiki had truly advanced to the unruffled realm, even Thowling could not see through her true strength. However, when he went to the primeval forest, Yusiki had once sparred with Lu Yuan. Even if she used the Xianyuan sword, the result of the sparring between them was that Lu Yuan was completely defeated. According to Qing Feng's speculation, Yusiki, whose cultivation was only at the peak of Emperor Wu 9th grade, most likely had the strength of a peak 1st grade martial god realm expert. Her opponent, Zhongli Xuanna, was also a peak 1st grade martial god realm expert. Chapter 1860. Sunset Lake on the Island. Yu Haoran, what's the meaning of this? Not only had he ignored his threat, but he had also allowed his family and friends to challenge him as an opponent. Yu Haoran's actions were a complete humiliation in Zhongli Qingyang's eyes. Yu Haoran's response confirmed his conjecture. What's the meaning of this? Yu Haoran turned around to look at the ashen-faced Zhongli Qingyang and asked in return. His eyes were filled with disdain. It's very simple. Zhongli Qingyang, you're too weak. You're not worthy of me personally taking action. Thus, I can only send a brother of mine to teach you how to behave. You, how dare you humiliate me? After obtaining Yu Haoran's imprint, Zhongli Qingyang was burning with rage. He instantly took out a mid-grade God Realm sword and rebuked. That's right. I've humiliated you. What can you do about it? Yu Haoran also rebuked angrily, not to be outdone. My young friend, my Zhongli clan has no enmity with you in the past. Why do you have to humiliate my clan leader like this? Just as Yu Haoran's rebuke ended and Zhongli Qingyang was about to attack with his sword, a gentle and benevolent voice suddenly rang out from the core of the palace. Accompanied by the gentle and benevolent voice, a white-haired old man in coarse gray robes appeared above the palace. His aura was restrained, and he had a benevolent appearance. Afterward, the benevolent white-haired old man stepped through the air. He seemed to be moving slowly, but in reality, he crossed dozens of kilometers with a single step and appeared beside Zhongli Qingyang. The mysteries of the laws of dual flash. Yu Haoran's heart skipped a beat when he saw the white-haired old man's speed. He then carefully comprehended the laws of dual flash that he had comprehended. Greetings, Ancestor Ziyuan. Zhongli Qingyang withdrew his angry gaze from Yu Haoran and bowed respectfully to the white-haired old man. Zhongli Zuan nodded at Zhongli Qingyang and looked at Yu Haoran with a benevolent gaze. I have no enmity with you in the past. Because the time Zhongli Ziyuan spent using the dual laws of flash was too short, he was unable to use this opportunity to deepen his comprehension of the laws. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who had taken the initiative to end his law comprehension, sneered and took out 3 special jade boxes, 3 pill bottles, and 3 jade slips from his storage ring. Senior, my junior fellow apprentice Wu Zhengjun is truly in love with Miss Shuiqin. As Wu Zhengjun's senior fellow apprentice and elder brother, I, Yu Haoran, personally came here with 9 treasures to propose marriage. This could completely express my and my junior fellow apprentice's sincerity. However, what about your noble fellow apprentice? At this point, Yu Haoran looked at Zhongli Qingyang. His eyes immediately surged with anger as he reprimanded him. Not only did your patriarch not invite us to the island, but he also sent a reckless slave to humiliate us. This caused my junior fellow apprentice's mind to suffer irreparable damage, and he lost the hope of breaking through to the martial god realm in the future. When his gaze shifted to Zhongli Ziyuan, his anger was instantly replaced by an aggrieved expression. Yu Haoran asked angrily, Senior, do you think there's any enmity between us? Should I come here to take revenge? Facing Yu Haoran's furious questioning, Zhongli Ziyuan didn't know how to reply. He furrowed his brows and asked Zhongli Qingyang, Patriarch, what is going on? Ancestor, it's like this. The plan to reject the marriage proposal of Yu Haoran and Wu Zhengjun and betroth Zhongli Shuiqin to Ji Xing, the son of destiny, was decided by all the elders with real power in the family and several martial god ancestors. It was not that Zhongli Qingyang wanted to curry favor with the Yushu temple. Therefore, Zhongli Qingyang, who did not have too many misgivings, told Zhongli Ziyuan the whole story in detail. While Zhongli Qingyang was telling the story, Zhongli Shuiqin, who had used all her strength to get rid of Manager Go, rushed out of the palace and went straight to the people above the palace. It was because of Zhongli Shuiqin's carelessness that Manager Go had the opportunity to humiliate Wu Zhengjun. In the end, not only did Wu Zhengjun's mind suffer a serious injury, but even his bloodthirsty special physique was gradually disappearing. Therefore, when he saw Zhongli Shuiqin rushing out of the palace, Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with a cold light of annoyance. He wanted to punish her directly. However, when he saw Zhongli Shuiqin's swollen cheeks and the residual injuries on her legs, the annoyance in his heart disappeared. Shuiqin, where are you going? After quickly explaining the entire sequence of events, Zhongli Qingyang also saw Zhongli Shuiqin rushing over. However, when he saw that Zhongli Shuiqin did not stop immediately after reaching his side, but rushed directly to Yu Haoran, he immediately scolded her furiously. However, in the face of Zhongli Qingyang's scolding, Zhongli Shuiqin did not pay any attention to it. Instead, she suddenly sped up and rushed to Yu Haoran. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zhongli Shuiqin, who had rushed in front of Yu Haoran, knelt down on both knees and began to apologize with tears in her eyes. Yu Shixiang, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I humiliated you for no reason. I caused Xiaojuan's life to be in danger. Miss Shuiqin, what are you doing? As Zhongli Shuiqin's actions were too sudden, Yu Haoran did not react at first, so he was unable to stop her in time. However, when she began to apologize with tears streaming down her face, Yu Haoran quickly reacted and bent down to help her up without a trace of resentment in his heart. When he was about to console her, Zhongli Qingyang's angry roar rang in his ears. Zhongli Shuiqin, do you know what you're doing? Kneeling. Zhongli Qingyang felt that Zhongli Shuiqin's actions earlier were a resounding slap to her face in front of everyone. Yu Haoran had humiliated her and looked down on her. This made Zhongli Qingyang unable to suppress the anger in his heart. After roaring, he directly swung the divine sword in his hand and stabbed towards Zhongli Shuiqin's back. At the same time, Zhongli Diwan looked at Zhongli Shuiqin and Yu Haoran with a hint of displeasure in his eyes. Senior Lu, sensing Zhongli Qingyang's intense killing intent, Yu Haoran knew that Zhongli Qingyang would definitely not show mercy because of the blood relationship between father and daughter. Thus, he quickly pulled her behind him and instructed Lu Yuan, who was beside him. Lu Yuan stood silently in the air like an ordinary swordsman. However, when he began to use his sword intent, he immediately became a divine sword that could cut through heaven and earth. Bang! Chapter 1861. Sunset Lake on the Island. Seeing Zhongli Qingyang unable to control the powerful force formed by the finger sword and was forced to retreat dozens of steps, there was a burst of gasps coming from the palace on the island. Zhongli Qingyang's cultivation was at the peak of the 9th grade martial emperor realm. His talent was at the level of a genius, and his mental cultivation method was at the level of a supreme martial artist. Together with his divine sword, the power of the sword technique he had used to strike Zhongli Shuiqin had already surpassed that of a third tribulation demigod. And Lu Yuan, he was also Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of the 9th grade, but he easily defeated Zhongli Qingyang without using any divine weapon or profound sword technique. This was enough to prove that Zhongli Qingyang had a monstrous talent and unfathomable potential. And a pure swordsman like Lu Yuan, who was far superior to the monstrous talent, definitely had the hope of becoming a supreme being. At the same time, he could also achieve the strength of being invincible in the same realm. Therefore, Zhongli Ziyuan, who originally had a displeased expression in his eyes, smiled and asked Lu Yuanwen, "How should I address you?" He was so polite to Lu Yuan because Zhongli Ziyuan wanted to recruit him, because he was very clear in his heart that a pure swordsman with monstrous talent had a monstrous strength. After glancing at Zhongli Yuan indifferently, Lu Yuan, who did not give any reply, turned to Yu Haoran with an inquiring look in his eyes. He knew whether Lu Yuan would continue to pursue the victory or temporarily stop and return. Seeing that Zhongli Xuana, who was supporting Zhongli Qingyang, was already secretly preparing to attack, Yu Haoran shook his head at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan quickly withdrew the sword intent that he had just activated and returned to an ordinary person, retreating behind Yu Haoran. Seeing that Lu Yuan did not pay any attention to him, Zhongli Ziyuan's eyes, which were filled with a gentle smile, flashed with a gloomy and fierce chill. He had already developed a strong killing intent towards Lu Yuan. However, no one expected that the moment Lu Yuan returned to the side of the crowd, a vast and ancient aura quickly rose from behind Yu Haoran. Accompanied by a vast and ancient aura, Yusiki, who also used her finger as a sword, charged towards Zhongli Xuena, who had just let go of Zhongli Qingyang's arm. "Arrogant, you're courting death. Kill her." No matter how amazing Lu Yuan's performance was, his opponent, Zhongli Qingyang, only had the cultivation of Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of level 9. They were at the same level, so it was normal for them to fight. However, Zhongli Xuena was a peak first-grade martial god. She was a godly spirit expert who had seen through the mysteries of life and death. In the eyes of the Zhongli clan, Yusiki, whose cultivation was only at the peak of the 9th level of Emperor Wu, had taken the risk to make a move. This was completely an arrogant and ignorant provocation. As a result, they all left their cultivation grounds and began to mock and ridicule her loudly. However, as Yusiki's opponent, Zhongli Xuena, took out her natal spiritual sword with a dignified expression, as if she was facing a formidable enemy. This was because she felt a strong and fatal danger from Yusiki's ancient aura. She knew that although Yusiki's cultivation was inferior to hers, she had the strength to defeat and kill her. Yu Haoran, when you reach the peak of the unruffled realm, you will obtain the martial arts and secret techniques that are compatible with the supreme unruffled heart sutra. With Siki's current cultivation, she can at least display the strength of Emperor Wu, so you don't need to help her for the time being. Seeing that Siki and Zhongli Xuan Na were about to fight, Yu Haoran, who was worried that his sister would not be a match for her, planned to let the life-stealing spiritual mouse control Zhongli Xuan Na's fate to weaken her cultivation and strength. However, the Thaling in his mind immediately stopped him and gave him a reason to stop him. Thaling, are you sure? With the help of the Destiny Stone Tablet's memory inheritance and the white energy's increase in mental state cultivation, the strength he could display now was only at the peak of the first level of the martial god realm. However, his sister, who had been cultivating in the prince's mansion, unknowingly had the strength of the peak of the third level of the martial god realm. This made Yu Haoran somewhat unable to believe and accept. Of course, while nodding to confirm, Thaling's eyes revealed a look of reminiscence as he explained. The supreme sovereign of the Middle Ages, with the cultivation of the peak of the 9th level of the martial god realm, coupled with the cultivation of the supreme unruffled heart sutra, could defeat a supreme existence who had just entered the sovereign stage. Then, Siki, whose talent and potential far surpassed the supreme sovereign, with Emperor Wu's cultivation of the peak of the 9th level of the martial god realm, possessing the strength of the peak of the 3rd level of the martial god realm, is nothing to be surprised about. As if confirming Thaling's explanation, Zhongli Xuan, who had just touched Siki's sword, instantly blushed and took 3 steps back. Emotionless transformation. After repelling Zhongli Xuan with one move, Siki didn't have the slightest soft-heartedness or hesitation as she continued to press forward and used the sword technique of the supreme cultivation method. Her slender, jade-like fingers combined with the emotionless sword technique to form a seemingly ordinary sword light. However, Zhongli Xuan and Zhongli Ziyuan's expressions couldn't help but change. PFFF. After directly spitting out the blood that she had forcibly suppressed, Zhongli Xuan immediately mobilized all of her divine power and soul power, then combined with the law mysteries that she had comprehended, also condensing a powerful sword ray. Boom! As Siki and Zhongli Xuan swung out their respective sword rays, and when the 2 sword rays heavily collided, the entire island instantly resounded with a deafening roar. Accompanied by the deafening roar, the energy shock wave formed when the sword rays collided quickly swept across the entire island. As a result, not only did the countless palaces on the island tremble, but also forced all cultivators below Emperor Wu's level to retreat to the edge of the island. There were even a few dozen cultivators who only had Emperor Wu's level but didn't have the corresponding strength, and they fell into the lake with blood spurting out of their mouths. And the moment the energy shock wave disappeared, Zhongli Xuan's sword ray that had been condensed using her divine power and soul power, combined with the law mysteries, shattered like a beautiful jade. Then, Siki used the emotionless transformation sword ray to continue at lightning speed, directly piercing towards Zhongli Xuan's forehead. The sword light that was condensed from the mysteries of the law contained a part of Zhongli Xuan's essence, energy, and soul. The moment the sword light was completely shattered, her mind and soul were also severely injured, causing her strength to fall to the early first-grade martial god realm. Therefore, when she saw the sword ray that had only lost a third of its power heading straight for her forehead, Zhongli Xuan's face instantly paled. Chapter 1862. Sunset Lake on the Island. Brother Black Rat, immediately control Zhongli Ziyuan's fate and help me kill this person. Just as the rough hand grasped the sword ray, Yu Haoran immediately ordered the life-stealing spirit mouse that had already stretched out its paw and pressed on Zhongli Ziyuan's name. At the same time, an extremely fast sword technique from the Destiny Stone Steel combined with the Yuan Massacre Sword that quickly appeared in his hand slashed at Zhongli Ziyuan, who was planning to destroy the sword ray. Although Siki had used the profound Heart Sutra sword technique to create a sword ray with the might of an early third-grade martial god, Zhongli Ziyuan, who was grasping the sword ray, was completely confident that he could use his strength as a peak 8th grade martial god to destroy the sword ray, and use his aura to directly injure Yusiki, whose talent and potential far surpassed Lu Yuan's. However, just as he was about to use his strength to destroy the sword ray, the chaotic divine power and soul power in his body, as well as the sudden loss of comprehension of the laws, caused Zhongli Yuan's strength to drop to early 1st grade martial god. When an early 1st grade martial god faced a sword ray with the might of an early 3rd grade martial god, the result was that the sword ray directly pierced through Zhongli Ziyuan's hand and continued to pierce toward Zhongli Xuan'a. The intense pain from his hand being pierced was far less important than the sudden situation in his body. Thus, Zhongli Yuan forcefully endured the intense pain from his hand and planned to carefully examine the reason why he had lost control of his divine power and soul power and the profound mysteries of the laws in his body. However, right at this moment, a strong sense of fatal danger made him immediately stop examining his body's condition and immediately turn around to look. Soon after, he saw a blood-like sharp sword chi slashing toward him as fast as lightning. Sensing that the scarlet sword chi's might had reached the peak of 1st grade martial god and was no longer something he could withstand in his current state, Zhongli Ryuan quickly retreated while loudly begging for mercy. "Little friend, let's talk nicely. Please quickly withdraw the sword chi." Unfortunately, Yu Haoran not only did not pay any attention to Zhongli Ryuan's begging for mercy, he even used his will to increase the speed of the sword chi's attack. "Little friend, as long as you're willing to stop now, this old man will agree to any conditions." When Zhongli Ziyuan saw the scarlet sword chi's attack speed suddenly increase, the pressure of death made him even more panicked as he begged for mercy. The conditions that Zhongli Ziyuan gave when he begged for mercy caused Zhongli Xueqin, who was in a state of grief and self-blame, to immediately feel joy in her heart. She clearly knew that Ancestor Ziyuan, who had reached the peak 8th grade martial god realm, had great influence in the clan. As long as he agreed to her marriage with Wu Jingjun, she would be able to do anything. Then, even if all the clansmen in the clan, including his father, Zhongli Qingyang, objected, it would be useless. Therefore, Zhongli Xueqin planned to remind Yu Haoran to temporarily spare old Ancestor Ziyuan's life. However, just as she opened her mouth, before she could even make a sound, the scarlet sword chi, whose attack speed had increased once again, heavily slashed onto Zhongli Yuan's body, directly splitting him into two. Since the Yuan slaughter sword was a top-notch, innate spirit treasure that was specially used to injure the soul, when the bright red sword chi split open Zhongli Yuan's divine body, it also directly destroyed the soul in his sea of consciousness. At the same time, due to Zhongli Yuan's forceful interference, Zhongli Xuan'a, who had taken the initiative to disperse the defense formed by her divine power and soul power and seized the time to heal herself, was also directly pierced between her eyebrows by the sword chi. Then, the sharp sword chi that erupted from the sword chi directly strangled her soul. Seeing Zhongli Xuan'a's corpse, as well as Zhongli Yuan's remnant body heavily smash onto the island's palace, everyone in the Zhongli clan was completely stunned. This was because in their subconscious minds, godly experts like the two ancestors should live as long as the heavens and earth, as glorious as the sun and moon, and should not be killed. After easily killing Zhongli Ziyuan, who was a peak 8th grade martial god, Yu Haoran, who secretly sighed in relief, turned his head and ordered Yusiki, "Sister, you go back first." After nodding indifferently, Yusiki flashed back to Lu Yuan's side, while Yu Haoran's fierce gaze that was filled with murderous intent turned to Zhongli Qingyang, who was in a daze, as if he had lost his mind. The gaze that was filled with fierce murderous intent stimulated Zhongli Qingyang to quickly wake up from his dazed state. When he thought of Yu Haoran's decisiveness and ruthlessness when he killed Ancestor Ziyuan, and the humiliation he had brought to Yu Haoran, he immediately cried out in horror. "Yu Haoran, what are you trying to do?" Yu Haoran stretched out his finger and flicked the hilt of the Yuan massacre sword as he asked with a sneer. Zhongli Qingyang, don't you know what I'm trying to do? Faced with Yu Haoran's question that was filled with murderous intent, Zhongli Qingyang sped up his retreat as he threatened loudly. Yu Haoran, there are still peak ninth grade martial gods and half-tribulation sovereigns in my Zhongli clan. If you dare to harm me, the ancestors will definitely make you and your friends die a tragic death. As if to compliment Zhongli Qingyang's threat, a terrifying aura that caused the entire island to tremble suddenly emerged from the depths of the palace as soon as he finished speaking. As the terrifying aura rose, a handsome young man in white clothes slowly walked out from the depths of the palace. Just like when Zhongli Ziyuan had appeared, the white-clothed young man's steps seemed slow, but in reality, he crossed several dozen miles with a single step and appeared before Yu Haoran. The appearance of the white-clothed young man immediately gave Zhongli Qingyang boundless confidence. After stopping his retreat, he quickly rushed to the white-clothed young man's side and bowed respectfully. Qingyang greets ancestor Mingjing. Ignoring Zhongli Qingyang's bow, Zhongli Mingjing looked at Yu Haoran with eyes that seemed to be filled with the vicissitudes of life as he asked with a slightly hoarse voice, "How did you make Ziyuan lose control of his divine force and soul force? And how did you sever the mysteries of the laws that he had comprehended?" Zhongli Mingjing's questions that hit the nail on the head made Yu Haoran immediately nervous. However, when he recalled that he had gathered Qing Feng and the others in hopes of revealing a part of his true identity, he could stabilize the morale of his troops while seizing the fortune of the world. As a result, Yu Haoran quickly calmed down and spoke with disdain and mockery in his eyes. "You and I are already mortal enemies, so why should I tell you the heaven-defying secret technique that I possess? That's true." Chapter 1863. Sunset Lake on the Island. Just as Zhongli Mingjing took out the simple sword made of green wood, the pagoda spirit in his sea of consciousness suddenly lost control of its emotions and shouted loudly, "Yu Haoran, this is the Qingping sword, a natural spirit treasure." Faling's true form was the space-time victor, a natural spirit treasure nurtured from the chaos. It contained the 32 marks of chaos, and its grade and power were far superior to the Qingping sword. Logically speaking, he should not have lost control of his emotions. However, his emotions, which should not have been out of control, had suddenly gone out of control. This was enough to prove that the Qingping sword was definitely hiding a secret related to the pagoda spirit. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who wanted to gossip, could not help but want to know what was going on. Alas! In response to Yu Haoran's questioning, Faling sighed softly and explained with a complicated expression, "Yu Haoran, the Qingping sword is not only a natural spirit treasure comparable to a lower sovereign, but also a beloved object that accompanied Prime Tongtian as he grew up. In Prime Tongtian's heart, although the Qingping sword's grade and power are far inferior to the 4 immortal slaying swords, it is far superior to the 4 immortal slaying swords in terms of affection and status. It is a companion that he would never give up or abandon, unless an unforeseen accident has happened to him. Faling, restrain your grief." Although Faling had never explained his relationship with Prime Tongtian in detail, Yu Haoran could guess that they were very close from the few times he had mentioned Prime Tongtian. Therefore, when Faling saw Prime Tongtian's beloved object, the Qingping sword, he guessed that Prime Tongtian might have fallen and lost control of his emotions. He thought of Xinyuanzi, whose cultivation and strength were far inferior to Prime Tongtian's, and of the sovereigns of the guardian clans and reclusive clans, who were safe and sound in the endless void, waiting to fight for a chance in the immeasurable tribulation. Prime Tongtian, who had the strongest offensive strength and means, had long been destroyed. Yu Haoran, who deeply felt that the world was unpredictable, did not know how to comfort Faling. "I'm fine." After taking a deep breath and dispelling the sadness in his heart, Faling suddenly asked with a solemn expression, "Yu Haoran, I want to ask you for a favor." "I hope." Yu Haoran didn't need to think too much. He knew what the Tower Genie wanted him to do. so he directly interrupted the Tower Genie's request and gave his promise. Faling, don't worry. Even if the supreme existence of the Zhongli clan comes, even if the entire Zhongli clan is destroyed, I will do my best to help you take back the Qingping sword. Yu Haoran, thank you. After hearing Yu Haoran's promise, Faling expressed his gratitude. Faling, there's no need to be so courteous between us. After pretending to criticize Faling with dissatisfaction, Yu Haoran directly ordered the doomed spiritual rat, whose paw was already on Zhongli Mingjing's name, to be ready to control his fate at any time. Then he turned his head to look at Qing Feng, who was standing at the edge of the island. Senior brother Qing Feng, are you confident that you could defeat Zhongli Mingjing? Although Qing Feng was also at the peak of the 9th level of the martial god realm, he had only reconstructed his body for a short time. His divine soul and divine body were not 100% integrated, so he could not display his peak strength for the time being. Therefore, when Qing Feng came to his side, Yu Haoran asked directly, Junior brother Yu, if I didn't have that sword that is as powerful as a lower supreme being, I would have a 90% chance of defeating Zhongli Mingjing. But now? Qing Feng replied indifferently as he stared at the Qingping sword in Zhongli Mingjing's hand. 50% chance. Senior brother Qing Feng, if I can use a special method to weaken Zhongli Mingjing's divine power and soul energy and cut off his connection to the laws, how confident are you? Although 50% seemed like a high chance of defeating Zhongli Mingjing, Yu Haoran's ultimate goal was to kill Zhongli Mingjing and take the Qingping sword from him. Therefore, he needed Qing Feng to have at least an 80% chance of defeating Zhongli Mingjing. Only then could he create the best opportunity to kill Zhongli Mingjing with a sneak attack. Junior brother Yu, if you can cut off Zhongli Mingjing's connection to the laws and ensure that no stronger opponent disturbs him. When Qing Feng thought about how Yu Haoran had weakened Zhongli Ziyuan's god energy and soul energy, as well as the special method he used to sense the profound mysteries of the laws, he was able to kill Zhongli Ziyuan with the strength of a peak first-grade martial god. Then, not only will I have a 100% chance of defeating him in 3 moves, but I will also have an 80% chance of severely injuring him. Senior brother Qing Feng, let's do it. After receiving Qing Feng's confident guarantee, Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with a cold light. Perhaps Zhongli Mingjing was very confident in his own strength. Whether it was the few seconds Yu Haoran was stunned, or the dozen seconds he spent talking with Qing Feng, Zhongli Mingjing gave them enough time to wait. He didn't make the first move. He waited until Qing Feng walked past Yu Haoran and took out his divine weapon that was at the peak of the god rank. Only then did he channel all of his divine power and soul energy into the Qingping sword. He combined it with the laws he had comprehended to unleash a sword technique that was at the level of a half-tribulation sovereign. However, when he was halfway through unleashing his sword technique, his divine power and soul energy suddenly went berserk and weakened uncontrollably, and he gradually lost his connection to the laws he had comprehended. A trace of panic flashed through Zhongli Mingjing's eyes. Then, his panic was quickly replaced by determination. He immediately took out a special escape talisman and used it to disappear from where he was. Then, he appeared at the northernmost part of the island, which was at least a few hundred meters away from Yu Haoran and Qing Feng. Not only was Qing Feng surprised by Zhongli Mingjing's unexpected use of the escape talisman, but even the countless experts of the Zhongli family were puzzled. Although Qing Feng, who had replaced Yu Haoran, was at the peak of the 9th level of the martial god realm, Zhongli Mingjing's cultivation wasn't inferior to his opponent's. At the same time, he had the help of the Qingping sword, which was at the level of a lower sovereign. He was completely capable of defeating and killing his opponent. Compared to the surprise in Qing Feng's eyes, and the countless experts of the Zhongli family were puzzled, Yu Haoran looked extremely vexed when he saw Zhongli Mingjing use the escape talisman to escape. He was vexed that he had prematurely allowed the fate calamity spiritual mouse to control Zhongli Mingjing's fate, which had caused his opponent to be on guard. In the end, he had lost the opportunity to launch a sneak attack and kill his opponent. Chapter 1864. Sunset Lake on the Island. Zhongli Mingjing used the special escape talisman to instantly avoid a direct confrontation with Qing Feng. He hurriedly checked the situation in his body, trying to find a reason why his divine power and soul power had been greatly weakened, as well as why he had lost his connection with the laws. However, he didn't find anything even after checking for 5 minutes. Zhongli Mingjing looked up at Yu Haoran, who was full of frustration, and a fearful look appeared in his eyes. To a martial god, divine power and soul power were the root of their strength, while the laws were the foundation of their strength. Weakening the root and severing the foundation was almost equivalent to directly taking the life of a godly expert. At this moment, Zhongli Mingjing didn't dare to fight Qing Feng, even if he had the help of the Qingping sword, which was comparable to an inferior supreme sword, and even if there were 9 other martial gods in the palace. He didn't want to continue offending Yu Haoran. This was because he was worried that if he continued to anger Yu Haoran, it might very well bring about the destruction of the Zhongli family. As for Zhongli Ziyuan and Zhongli Xiuana, who had just been killed, they could only blame their bad luck and bad foresight. He wouldn't consider avenging them for the time being. Therefore, Zhongli Mingjing calmed himself down and walked towards Yu Haoran again as he squeezed out a fake smile and clasped his hands together. Zhongli Mingjing, the 99th leader of the Zhongli family, greets Pil God Yu. Sigh. Yu Haoran couldn't help but sigh when he saw the smile on Zhongli Mingjing's face. He apologized to Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Thaling, I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I can't forcefully take the Qingping sword for the time being. He had set up a simplified version of a 9 palaces, 9 bends mystic formation and killed many of the Zhongli family's experts. Apart from taking revenge for the humiliation he had suffered in the past, his ultimate goal was to facilitate the marriage between Wu Jingjun and Zhongli Shuiqin, and use this to awaken the slumbering Wu Jingjun. This was because only when Wu Jingjun truly awakened and recovered his injured mind could he further investigate the true reason for the disappearance of the bloodthirsty physique. Only then would he have the hope of becoming a martial god and sovereign again. As the martial god ancestors of the Zhongli clan who had already awakened, Zhongli Mingjing had the greatest cultivation and strength. He had the power to change Zhongli Qingyang's decision and give Wu Jingjun and Zhongli Shuiqin happiness. Therefore, he could only give up the Qingping sword for the time being for Wu's happiness. Yu Haoran, to me, the Qingping sword is only a relic I use to remember my old friend Tong Tian. Its symbolic meaning is far greater than its practical use, so it's my fortune to obtain it, but it's my fate to lose it. There's no need for you to blame yourself, nor do you want to delay Wu Zhongjuan's happiness because of this. Although Thaling's words of comfort were spoken in an extremely relaxed manner, his eyes were filled with great reluctance. This was enough to show just how much he desired the Qingping sword. Yu Haoran secretly let out a sigh of relief after receiving Thaling's forgiveness. He also clasped his hands towards Zhongli Mingjing in return. Yu Haoran, the son-in-law of the kingdom of Emperor Qin, greets Senior Mingjing. Zhongli Mingjing secretly let out a sigh of relief after receiving Yu Haoran's greeting. He immediately contacted Zhongli Qingyang through his soul and told him to quickly make arrangements for receiving the important guests. Over 100 elite experts on the level of Martial Exalts and Emperor Wu, a Hall Master on the level of First Tribulation Half-Gods, an Elder on the level of Peak Third Tribulation Half-Gods, and 2 Ancestors on the level of Peak Martial God and Peak Eighth Tribulation Half-Gods. Faced with such heavy losses, Zhongli Qingyang did not hurry to think of a way to take revenge, but instead treated his enemy as a top VIP. This caused Zhongli Qingyang, who had received Zhongli Mingjing's orders, to be filled with anger and resentment. However, no matter how resentful he felt, Zhongli Qingyang did not dare to disobey Zhongli Mingjing's orders. This was because not only could Zhongli Mingjing easily overturn all his decisions with his strength and status, but he also had the authority to appoint and dismiss the patriarch. As a result, Zhongli Qingyang forcefully suppressed his resentment and headed straight for the palace below. Of course, probably only Zhongli Qingyang knew whether he was truly treating Yu Haoran with sincerity. He'll guide you. Ming Jing sincerely apologizes for the humiliation the Zhongli clan has brought to you in the past. I guarantee that I will give you a satisfactory explanation. Stopping 10 meters away from Yu Haoran, Zhongli Mingjing tried his best to lower his posture as he apologized and promised. Senior Mingjing is too polite. After replying politely, Yu Haoran contacted the doomed spirit mouse with his mind and told him to release his control over Zhongli Mingjing's fate. Just as the doomed spirit mouse withdrew its claw from Zhongli Mingjing's name, his weakened divine power and soul power instantly recovered. He regained control over the mysteries of the laws that he had lost connection with. Zhongli Mingjing knew that Yu Haoran was willing to let go of the grudge between them. He truly heaved a sigh of relief as he invited Yu Haoran with an even more respectful attitude. He'll guide you. As a reclusive clan from the Middle Ages, my Zhongli clan has many extinct spiritual teas and spiritual fruits. Why don't you follow Ming Jing to have a taste? Then I'll have to trouble Senior Ming Jing. Proposing marriage had to be done in a more formal setting so that people wouldn't pick on him. Therefore, Yu Haoran was all smiles as he replied to Zhongli Mingjing's invitation. In the center of the island, which was half the size of Xianyang City, there were a total of 99 palaces of the same size and shape. If one wasn't familiar with the island situation or wasn't a formation emperor, they would be completely lost as soon as they entered the palaces. They might even be trapped in the palaces until they died. This was because the 99 identical palaces were constructed using the 9 palaces' 8 trigrams Soul Maze formation and the Sun-Moon Star defensive formation. The power of these formations was already at the low-grade god tier. They followed Zhongli Mingjing and landed in front of one of the palaces in the center. On both sides of the palace stood a pair of stone lions with wings. They gave off an awe-inspiring feeling. Yu Haoran, this is a pair of puppets with the strength of a beginner martial god. They were refined using the deep-sea serene star stone, which can be used to forge divine weapons, and the bones and blood of the divine beast flying soul lion. He was very clear about the importance of the marriage agreement with Zhongli Shuiqin for Wu Jingjun to recover from his injuries. Therefore, after adjusting his thaling, he turned his attention back to Yu Haoran. Moreover, this pair of stone lion puppets is also one of the important points of the Qiuyun soul falling formation. They can transfer the power of the formation to increase the defensive and offensive power of the palaces in front of you. As Thaling introduced the stone lions on both sides of the palaces, Yu Haoran subconsciously paused. Then, when no one was paying attention, he reached out and touched the stone lion on the left. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.